Chapter 1739. After Sun Chongqing entered the Tianluo mountain, he confirmed that he had no fate with the great Tao and felt extremely disappointed. However, he soon withdrew his thoughts, as the peak leader had given him a strict order. After that, Sun Chongqing was like a gust of wind, blowing through every corner of Tianluo mountain. He only had one goal, to find Zhou Huan. He didn't know why the peak master was suddenly so interested in this person, but he could faintly guess that it was related to the feeling he felt when he saw Qinyu. Then there was a rough explanation. Zhou Huan was related to the peak master's great Tao imperfection. It was precisely because he realized this that Sun Chongqing didn't dare to delay at all. Otherwise, how could he easily accept his fate in Tianluo mountain? Especially when the Taoist accumulation was soaring into the sky and everyone was fighting for it. His life was in the hands of the peak lord. However, the most vexing thing was that the Skyfall mountain range was a world of its own. It was shockingly large. Sun Chongqing had already done his best, but he still hadn't found Zhou Huan's whereabouts. The peak lord had been silent the entire time and had not urged Sun Chongqing. However, to Sun Chongqing, this silence was like a silent mountain. He did not know when it would smash down and shatter his bones. Found you. The voice of the peak leader suddenly appeared in his mind. In the next moment, Sun Chongqing lost control of his body. Mount Tianluo was a world of its own, and anyone who had crossed the celestial door could not enter. However, this did not mean that there was no other way to send power into it. Niu Dingtian's golden armor of the Great Path was like this. Now, on the cloud-sweeping peak, the peak lord who was only a step away from the Emperor realm could also do something similar. Bang! Space instantly exploded, and Sun Chongqing instantly accelerated. His body was like a phantom, whistling into the distance. Black clouds began to churn in the sky, and wisps of terrifying qi scattered down. They intertwined with each other like a huge net, trying to pull Sun Chongqing into it. "Patriarch, what are you waiting for?" Sun Chongqing shouted. In the next moment, a large hand appeared out of thin air, and it waved into the sky to disperse the black clouds that had converged there. "Qing Tian, I can only help you fight for half a day." Half a day was enough. Bang! Sun Chongqing's speed was even faster, smashing through space and whistling into the distance. A throbbing feeling gushed out from the depths of his heart. He stopped and looked up into the distance. There was nothing there, but he could feel an extremely strong, uneasy aura that was growing stronger and stronger. Danger was approaching. Who was it? Qin Yu's first thought was that his identity had been exposed, causing that clan to kill him. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. Rumble! An earth-shattering explosion came from afar, and a black line appeared in his vision. It was him, Sun Chongqing. Qin Yu frowned. He couldn't figure out just how this person could erupt with such a formidable strength. More importantly, given the current situation in Mount Tianluo, instead of fighting for the great Tao, he came to find trouble with him. This kid must be crazy. Niu Daodu also recognized Sun Chongqing, and her expression changed. "Zhou Huan, he's looking for you." Qin Yu nodded. He took a deep breath, but before he could speak, Niu Daodu pulled him behind her. "His aura isn't right. Don't come out." As she spoke, she took a step forward. "Sun Chongqing, I, Niu Daodu, am here. If you don't want to die, hurry up and scram." With a loud shout, her momentum was extraordinary. The rapidly approaching Sun Chongqing didn't say a single word. He clenched his fist and punched out. Bang! Thunder exploded like a waterfall, instantly piercing through space and smashing into Niu Daoda's body. Brilliant golden light erupted. The thunder cracked apart and scattered in all directions, vanishing. It disappeared. The golden armor of the great Tao appeared on its own, protecting Niu Daodu. Even though she was struck by the terrifying thunder, she was still unharmed. "Scram!" Sun Chongqing roared out, his killing intent wild and cruel. Niu Daodu was stunned, as if she hadn't regained her composure. She had already revealed her name, and yet Sun Chongqing still dared to attack. "He isn't Sun Chongqing. Miss Niu, be careful," Qin Yu loudly warned. By the time Niu Daodu regained her composure, Sun Chongqing had already arrived in front of her and punched out. Bang! A terrifying strength crashed into the earth. Where Niu Daodu was, the earth was instantly torn apart, turning into a complete mess. As for her figure, it was smashed deep into the ground by this fist. It was already impossible to see her again. Sun Chongqing didn't stop. His feet fell as he hurtled towards Qin Yu. At this moment, his cold eyes were filled with murderous intent. In samsara, the sun and moon in those eyes were within Qin Yu's body. In other words, it was this person who had ruined the plans he had laid out for 10,000 years and forcefully destroyed the turning point of his great Tao. How could Venerable Sky not hate him? He was also pleasantly surprised that he had regained what he had lost. As long as he could kill Qin Yu and take back the sun and moon in his eyes, he would be able to make up for the flaws in his great Tao and break through his bottleneck to become a true sovereign. Sun Chongqing's ankle was suddenly grabbed and he was pulled back. "You want to kill Zhou Huan? Dream on." The palm covered in the golden armor of the great Tao suddenly exerted strength and swung Sun Chongqing up. With loud bangs, he smashed into the ground, creating countless craters. Sun Chongqing held his head in his hands, his eyes ice cold. With a loud cracking sound, his leg was broken off at the ankle. Then he borrowed the strength of Niu Daodu's throw to hurtle towards Qin Yu. Bang! His fist smashed into the void bead. The small world it opened began to wildly twist and cave in, as if it would shatter at any moment. But at this time, faint traces of golden light appeared on the surface of the void bead. Shock and anger appeared in Sun Chongqing's eyes. He turned his head, his icy cold eyes covering Niu Daodu. As expected, the golden armor of the great Tao on her body had dimmed by a great deal. In order to save him, you diverted the strength of the golden armor of the great Tao. "Do you want to die?" Sun Chongqing slowly said. The sole of his foot that had been cut off had already grown back. Niu Daodu paled. She was clearly afraid, but her eyes were firm. "I will not allow you to harm Zhou Huan in the slightest." Sun Chongqing frowned. "Then I will kill you first." Bang! The ground instantly shattered. He hurtled towards Niu Daodu. At the same time, millions of bolts of lightning broke out from his body, weaving together into a massive pool of thunder that submerged her. Rumble, rumble. Terrifying fluctuations of strength wildly erupted from within. Baiji furrowed her eyebrows. "What sort of bewitching potion did you feed her? In order to save you, she is willing to give up her life." Qin Yu bitterly smiled. "If I told you that I didn't know, would you believe me?" Baiji coldly sneered. She glared at him, her intentions obvious. But this was the truth. Just what was Niu Daodu thinking? Qin Yu discovered that even he wasn't sure what was going on. But there was no doubt that the favor he owed her this time was growing larger and larger. Originally, he had planned to give Niu Daodu some compensation after the matter at Skyfall Mountain was over. But in the current situation, how could he compensate her? He couldn't just say that he had saved her life, and now she had risked her life to help him. Then they could call it even. There was no such logic in this world. And as a person, they had to have some dignity. Luckily, Niu Daodu's golden armor of the great Tao was a heaven-defying trump card. It was equal to the defense of a true emperor. Sun Chongqing's current strength was indeed terrifying, but as long as it wasn't a true emperor, there was no way to break it. From this point of view, Niu Daodu would at most be a little frightened. Her life wouldn't be in danger. But he was afraid that someone would think of a way to break the current situation. The golden armor of the great Tao. If the armor was given to Niu Daodu, Niu Dingtian would have a flaw. And in the current Central Desolate, there were many people who wanted to deal with the Niu family. Within the pool of thunder, Sun Chongqing's eyes turned silver white. They were cold and indifferent, like a god from the highest heavens. "Let's do it," he said in a low voice. His voice was covered by the roar of thunder. But these 3 words were destined to set off a storm in the world. The birth of a true emperor was difficult, but killing a true emperor would be 10 times or even 100 times more difficult. But even so, there were still cases of true emperors dying in the records of the central, desolate region. This showed that although they were peerlessly powerful and had reached the peak of the world, they could still be killed. For example, Niu Dingtian at this moment. His physical defense was the best in the world, comparable to that of the survivors of the ancient times. But after all, it was only physical defense. After losing the golden armor of the great Tao, as the leader of the clan had said, he would lose at least 20 to 30% of his combat strength. For a powerful true emperor like Niu Dingtian, this was already an extremely weak state. The opportunity couldn't be missed. It wouldn't come again. Outside the Tianluo mountain, Niu Dingtian's phantom suddenly snorted coldly and disappeared. The surroundings were quiet. The air was filled with an emotion known as knowing what was going on. Someone had made a move, and the person who had made a move was right here. After all, for a true emperor with one thought 10,000ly, the consumption of strength to maintain a projection was negligible. Niu Dingtian directly dispersed his phantom. It was obvious that the situation he was facing now was very serious. And between true emperors, once the great Tao involved life and death, there would be irreconcilable hatred. If they weren't confident, they wouldn't make a move. Perhaps there would be a world phenomenon today, and a true emperor would die. The phantom of the clan leader was silent. Only a sharp light flashed in the depths of his eyes. On the sweeping cloud peak, Sky Bearing had made a deal with him. As long as he succeeded today and became a true emperor, he would become a guest of that clan. That was why he had made a move in 300 years. This was tantamount to another strong safeguard for that clan. It would be best if Niu Dingtian was killed. That would give that clan more breathing room. Otherwise, they would at least force him to take back the golden armor of the great Tao. Killing him might be difficult, but the latter wasn't. As long as the golden armor of the great Tao was taken back, Sky Bearing's spiritual master could easily achieve his goal. As for Niu Dingtian's revenge afterwards, it was inevitable that he would have a headache. No one wanted to offend a true emperor to the point of no return. But now, between life and death, that clan had no other choice. Heavenly Bull region. Niu family's base territory, Heavenly Bull City. At this time, black clouds hung low in the sky, ready to overtake the city. Thunder rumbled, releasing tens of thousands of bolts of lightning that pierced through the skies. A terrifying aura arrived, suppressing everyone to the extreme, making it hard for them to breathe. Niu Dingshan's complexion was calm. He shouted out loud, "Children of the Niu family, follow me to form the Heavenly Bull Great Array to protect the old ancestor." He certainly knew that the reason his enemy had come today was because the old ancestor had placed the golden armor of the great Tao on Niu Daoda's body. The old ancestor was protecting his daughter. Niu Dingshan's eyes were firm. He was ready to die. However, before he could make a move, he suffered a kick and was sent flying. Niu Dingtian was annoyed. He cursed, "I'm fine. It's not time for you to risk your life yet. Hurry up and get the hell out of here." He looked up at the tumbling black clouds. Lightning illuminated his face and excitement filled his eyes. "Come at me. My hands have been itching for a long time. I'll use you all to stretch my muscles." Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, the entire Heavenly Bull City sank 3 feet. Niu Dingtian shot into the sky, smashing through space and tearing apart the lightning. Chapter 1740. The darkness was like a tide, and the lightning was like a prison. Niu Dingtian's laughter was so loud that even the thunder couldn't drown it out. "Even if I lose the Great Path Golden Armor, I can still beat you into a corner. Come on, hit harder. Are you drinking milk? Ha ha ha. Don't go. Fight with me today. Take my heavenly bull demon fist. Boom! A huge sound rang out, and a figure could be vaguely seen being sent flying. Apart from the true sovereigns, no one in the world could clearly see the battle between the three true sovereigns in the 9 heavens. Niu Dingtian was terrifyingly strong. Even without the Great Path golden armor, he still had the upper hand against 2 opponents. Although the 2 true sovereigns didn't really want to fight to the death, his strength was still frightening. But his strength was still frightening. Maybe he had already touched the level of the true sovereigns. He had reached or was infinitely close to the current level of the Qin Emperor. No wonder he dared to give the Great Path golden armor to Niu Daodu, outside Heavenly Bull City, far away from the battlefield, the phantom of the Imperial Master side. What a pity. If Niu Dingtian fell into a disadvantageous position today and showed signs of defeat, he would kill Niu Dingtian without hesitation. But now he didn't dare to make a move. No one was sure whether Niu Dingtian still had strength left. Even if he didn't, Niu Dingtian's level would definitely not wait for death if he was really in a desperate situation. It wasn't difficult to drag people to the grave with him. That was why the Imperial Master said it was a pity, because this should be the best chance to kill Niu Dingtian. But even he didn't dare to make a move, so the others who were watching wouldn't take the risk. In the inky black clouds, the true sovereign from the Antiquity Age was shocked and angry. Niu Dingtian was stronger than he had imagined. Unless he risked his life, he couldn't kill him. But he didn't want to risk his life, especially when his courage had been broken by Niu Dingtian. He was the one who was sent flying by the heavenly bull demon fist. A mouthful of blood rushed to his mouth, but he swallowed it back. It's over. Let's go. The ancient remnant turned around and left. In an instant, he broke free from the black clouds. With a punch, he shattered the space and disappeared within. Trash! The other true emperor roared angrily. No wonder the ancient remnant would end up in such a state. How could a bunch of cowards accomplish anything? He had always felt that Niu Dingtian's strength was not that strong. Without the golden armor of the Great Path, he had lost 20 to 30% of his battle prowess. Yet he was still able to fight 1 against 2 and put them at a disadvantage. He didn't believe that Niu Dingtian had reached the level of a true emperor. However, the ancient remnant true monarch had already fled. If Shao Qin remained alone, he would really be in danger. Niu Dingtian laughed. Old man Wujia, you're the only one left. Why don't you run for your life? Are you waiting for me to beat the shit out of you? Of the 2 people who made a move today, one was the ancestor of one of the 4 sects, the Boundless Sect. Niu Dingtian, don't be too arrogant. I don't believe that you've reached the Emperor realm. You will pay the price for unleashing your strength today. You better not reveal any flaws, or else the Ox family will definitely be exterminated. Old Ancestor Realmless roared, his voice spreading in all directions. Sinister intentions. These words were bound to fall into the ears of those with ulterior motives. Once there was a problem with Niu Dingtian, the entire Niu family would not be able to escape. Ha 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 ha. Niu Dingtian laughed. Old man Wujia, in terms of eloquence, I am indeed much stronger than you with your cultivation. That's right, I am very weak right now. If anyone wants to attack, then come. Look, no one dares to attack. Then let me send you out of here. Boom! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. Niu Dingtian punched out. The Boundless Sect's old ancestor was sent flying, blood spurting out from his nose and mouth. This punch was more than twice as strong as the heavenly bull demon's subduing fist. It had severely wounded the Boundless Sect's old ancestor. Niu Dingtian, I swear I won't let you go. With an angry roar, the Boundless Sect's old ancestor spat out blood and tore through space to escape. 1 against 2, a great victory. Within Heavenly Bull City, there was a sudden burst of cheers. Niu Dingshan shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice louder than thunder. Old Ancestor is mighty, #1 under the heavens. Niu Dingtian laughed with his hands on his hips. his grin reaching the back of his ears. "Don't be so arrogant. I don't care if I'm number one under the heavens or not." The imperial advisor's lips twitched. He looked deeply at Niu Dingtian, who was laughing into the heavens. One glance, 2 eyes, 3 eyes. He frowned and took a step back. He cupped his hands together and smiled. "Mr. Niu is unparalleled under the heavens. This poor priest admires you greatly. Farewell." He turned and left, his phantom directly dissipating. The imperial advisor didn't see anything wrong. But that punch just now was indeed ridiculously strong. Did Niu Dingtian really break through? As the imperial advisor turned and left without hesitation, the gazes that were focused on Heavenly Bull City turned away. Niu Dingtian sneered. He turned and returned to Heavenly Bull City. Niu Dingshan and the other Niu family juniors knelt on the ground, kowtowing and shouting, "Old ancestors' cultivation is heaven-piercing!" "Humph, humph, as long as you know. As long as I am here, our Heavenly Bull City will never change." Niu Dingtian waved his hand. "Go back and do what you need to do." Niu Dingshan respectfully nodded. He sent everyone away and hurried towards the old ancestors' cultivation area. "It's fine." Just as he finished speaking, he coughed and his face flushed red. Niu Dingshan hurriedly said, "Old ancestor." Niu Dingtian glared at him. "Get out of here and wander around. You're the one causing trouble for the Niu family if you stay here." "It's just a small injury. I'll be fine after a period of seclusion." His realm hadn't reached the peak of the Emperor realm. The Boundless Sect's old ancestor had guessed correctly. But unfortunately, there was only an injury and no reward. Of course, even if he hadn't reached the peak, the gap was extremely small. That was why Niu Dingtian could fight 1 against 2 and beat the Ancient Remnant and the Boundless Sect's old ancestor. But he had used too much force in the last punch. It was a self-inflicted wound. He didn't feel good when the Boundless Sect's old ancestor was seriously injured, but he couldn't say these words out loud. Otherwise, it would be too damaging to his prestige. Moreover, this punch was a deal between him and Meaty. It was worth it to exchange a small injury for a promise from her. A perfect immortal species, she truly coexisted with heaven and earth. Whether it was strength or fate, she was the most powerful and noble existence in the world. Even if Meaty's fate had fallen and she was no longer perfect, in Niu Dingtian's eyes, she was still far more worthy of being close to him than a true emperor. So when Meaty sent a message asking him to push the boat with the current and punch, Niu Dingtian agreed without hesitation. Outside Skyfall Mountain, the true emperor projections were in a tense atmosphere. Niu Dingtian had won. His victory was clean and unexpectedly beautiful. The strength he had displayed was terrifying, and the Boundless Sect's old ancestor's serious injury was a silent threat and suppression. Shua! Niu Dingtian's phantom appeared out of thin air. He laughed loudly, full of confidence. "Ha ha ha! You dare to come to my Heavenly Bull City? You have no idea of death. Just you wait. Once the matter at Skyfall Mountain is over, I will take back the golden armor and visit the Boundless Sect first." Cold intent filled the air and killing intent radiated. Niu Dingtian had always been a man of his word. The Boundless Sect was in trouble. In the past, Niu Dingtian had attacked them and destroyed half of their sect. This time, humph, it was even harder to say. No one spoke. The Boundless Sect's old ancestor had joined forces with the Ancient Remnant true emperors. 2 against 1. Niu Dingtian, who was not in his best condition, had been beaten into a sorry state. This was the price they had to pay. However, this did not mean that they would sit back and watch Niu Dingtian destroy the Boundless Sect. The 4 sects and 4 families were in confrontation with each other. There were conflicts of interest, but there were also deep ties of interest between them. In particular, as the last of the 4 sects, the Boundless Sect had signed a series of clauses in order to become one of the 4 sections. They had voluntarily given up part of their interests in exchange for the approval of the other members of the 4 sects and 4 families. If something happened to the Boundless sect, or to put it more bluntly, if they were replaced by the Nyo family, it would directly harm their interests. Of course, from another point of view, the Boundless sect being hated by the Nyo family was equal to sharing the risk for them. At the very least, the Sky Split, Daoyuan, and Black Marsh sects could breathe a sigh of relief. If the Nyo family wanted to establish a new sect, there would be no conflict with them. This would certainly ease the tense atmosphere between them. And this was the effect that Nyo Dingtian wanted to achieve by opening his mouth. It was too low class to simply say harsh words. As an existence that could become a true emperor and cultivate to the point of being on the verge of the strongest, it was naturally impossible for him to be as crude as he appeared. The patriarch suddenly said, "Old Ancestor Nyo is full of vigor. He has just beaten back 2 true emperors, and he is already declaring revenge. It seems that he still has strength to spare." There was a hidden meaning in his words. Nyo Dingtian looked over with a faint smile. "Patriarch, if you think that this old ox is bluffing, why don't we have a fight?" He took a step forward and laughed. "Great, I haven't had enough just now. This old ox is willing to do it. There is no need to trouble Patriarch." As he spoke, his phantom quickly became solid, and an astonishing aura burst out from it, instantly suppressing the surroundings. The Patriarch's expression changed slightly. "Nyo Dingtian, I have to preside over the affairs of Mount Tianluo today. I don't have time to accompany you in your madness." His eyes were filled with anger, and at the same time a trace of deep fear. "Old Ancestor Nyo, please calm down. Don't ruin the opportunity for the younger generation to ascend to the heavens. That's right. Mount Tianluo is right in front of us. Once a battle between true emperors breaks out, it will definitely affect it. Patriarch doesn't mean anything else. Old Ancestor, you think too much." The other true emperors said one after another. If it was in another place, they wouldn't care about the fight between the two, and they would be happy to see them fight to the death. But not now. Nyo Dingtian hesitated for a moment, and then stopped his action of descending with a cold snort. The phantom's aura gradually dissipated. "Patriarch, I will go to the Boundless sect first. After smashing their mountain gate, I will come to the Changshan domain to fight with you." The Patriarch nodded expressionlessly. "I agree." He turned around and looked at Mount Tianluo with a trace of gloominess in his eyes. No matter what, he had been humiliated today, and Nyo Dingtian's words were obviously a threat. Spiritual Master Qingtian's plan had failed. Now the best result was that they obtained the great Tao in Mount Tianluo, and the clan would have another true emperor. The second was that the great Tao was taken away, and the clan would have another true emperor for 300 years. If both of them failed, the clan would have a harder time. Chapter 1741. Within the Thunder Pond, Sun Chongqing's heart gradually sank to the bottom of the valley. Half a day had passed, but Nyo Daodu's great Tao golden armor showed no signs of being taken back. Just what was going on? With the current situation, the agreement between him and that clan would not be violated. Nyo Dingtian was actually powerful to this degree. Even without the great Tao golden armor, he could still fight 2 people at once. There was a high chance that his plan had failed, and it was impossible to conceal what happened at Skyfall Mountain today. Once this matter came to an end, Nyo Dingtian would surely condemn him. But Cloud Sweeping Peak would face a great calamity. Sun Chongqing hated this. The first hatred's great Tao was right in front of him. As long as he could obtain it, he could become a true sovereign. Although the heavens were high and the waters were wide, he would never be able to reach them. The second hatred's clan might have already calculated beforehand. Whether they cooperated with him or not, Cloud Sweeping Peak would have no other choice. If they didn't want to be destroyed by Nyo Ding Mountain, then the best way out was to join forces with that clan. But he wasn't a true sovereign, so he would inevitably be reduced to a vassal. The third hatred's Chinyu had ruined his chance to become a true sovereign. Now that he was in front of him, he couldn't kill him. He didn't dare to personally descend to Skyfall Mountain. This was because Niu Dingtian's projection was likely here. Once he discovered him, he would surely kill him. Niu Daodu's heart settled. With the defense of the great Dao golden armor, she was in an invincible position. Even if she stood still and let Sun Chongqing hammer her, she could still tire him to death. Without fear, her attacks were even more direct and forceful. Sun Chongqing was forced to constantly retreat and evade. Today's matter could no longer be accomplished. Leaving was the best choice to avoid damaging his own strength. But Sun Chongqing didn't want to. He wanted to stay and fight one last time. What if there was a chance? After all, his great Dao flaw was right in front of him, and Skyfall Mountain was like a purgatory right now. At any moment, unexpected dangers could erupt, and sometimes danger also meant opportunity. With a roar, Sun Chongqing punched out, sending the armored Niu Daodu flying away. At the same time, he borrowed the rebounding force to rapidly retreat. With the great Dao golden armor, Niu Daodu was in an invincible position. Continuing this stalemate was meaningless. Don't run. Ha ha ha. Weren't you very arrogant and wanted to kill me? Niu Daodu laughed excitedly after obtaining victory. Within the Void Realm bead, Qinyu let out a breath and secretly gave Old Cow a thumbs up. So awesome! It seemed that Niu Dingtian's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. It was no wonder that Little Meat had chosen him as her partner. Other than character, strength was also an important factor to consider. Bai Ji looked at Niu Daodu with a dignified expression. She knew very well that if the two of them became enemies, she would be in an invincible position. Great Dao golden armor, what a bully! So what if you have a powerful background? That's right. Today, Niu Daodu would use facts to prove that she was amazing. Miss Niu's strength is unparalleled. You were able to force back the villains of Sweeping Cloud Peak. You are truly fierce. Qinyu loudly said, his face full of admiration. Although that was indeed the case, Baiji could not help but roll her eyes at his tone. This person might have some tricks up his sleeve and be valued by Madame, but his character was terrible. He could not be trusted in the future. Niu Daodu's face flushed red. She awkwardly said, "This is all because of the High Ancestors' great Dao golden armor. I know this in my heart." Soon, she stuck out her chest. "But no matter what, Zhou Huan, you don't need to be afraid in the future. If Sun Chongqing dares to come again, I will hammer him to death." Qinyu nodded again and again. "With Miss Niu here, I naturally feel relieved." As he spoke, he looked up and then looked away. That race's true sovereign was spying on this place. But it was clear that he hadn't sensed anything wrong with Qinyu, nor did he know that Qinyu had already sensed his existence. This was because as time passed, Qinyu and that race's 24 people were doing their best to help him unravel the Tao. In other words, they were helping him refine the great Tao. Now, Qinyu could already feel the existence of that race's true sovereign. And before long, once he refined more of the great Tao and his connection with Skyfall Mountain deepened, he would be able to shield himself from his perception. Humph, humph. At that time, that race would be blind to everything that happened at Skyfall Mountain. Qinyu had already prepared a pleasant surprise. Miss Niu, the commotion just now was too great. It will definitely attract attention. Let's leave this place first. Niu Daodu nodded. Lead the way. Qinyu was stunned. He looked at Niu Daodu. She looked back at Qinyu, a curious expression on her face. She could roughly interpret it as, "What are you looking at me for?" Qinyu coughed. If that's the case, then let's go this way." Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. If it weren't for the fact that he was certain that Little Meat was currently in his soul space, Qinyu would have suspected that Niu Daodu had been possessed by her. She was too cooperative. She simply agreed to every request. "Qin, you didn't even need to explain anything. Even a naive girl shouldn't go this far, right? Moreover, according to Qin Yu's understanding, while Niu Daodu was simple and naive, she wasn't stupid at all. Has my identity been discovered? Qin Yu thought about it several times, but he didn't say anything. Niu Daodu's cooperation couldn't be any better. As for the reason, he would think about it later. Qin Yu led the way, and the three people quickly left. On the 13th floor, 6 official disciples and 6 personal attendants gathered. Chun Shangolv had already fallen asleep. His eyebrows were tightly furrowed, a pained expression on his face. Li Ruhua paled. She slowly said, "Senior apprentice brothers, senior apprentice sisters, do you really want to do this?" Her eyes fell on Mingzhe. Mingzhe lowered his head, avoiding her eyes. The elder senior apprentice, sister sneered. Junior apprentice sisterly, since things have come to this, what need is there to say any more? You and I both know that there is no way out. In the 13th floor, it was strictly forbidden for fellow disciples to kill each other. Once discovered, they would be severely punished. At the very least, their cultivation would be crippled and they would be expelled. So, what she said wasn't wrong. From the moment they thought of this to the moment they took the first step, they had already lost all paths of retreat. Su Wei slowly said, "Junior apprentice sisterly, you are very smart. You should know what to do. Tell us the truth about the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. Why suffer so much pain?" That's right. In my 13th floor, there are many interrogation methods. Junior apprentice, sisterly might not have heard of them, but I advise you not to try them. You will have to speak sooner or later. Why suffer such evil? Junior apprentice sisterly, please consider this carefully. Li Ruhua was silent for several breaths of time. She slowly nodded. You are right. I agree. But there is only one great Tao. Senior apprentice brothers and sisters, how do you plan on distributing it? Everyone's expressions changed. The disciples of the 13th floor still maintained their silence. But behind them, the attendants who had shared honor and disgrace with them, whose lives and deaths had already begun to shine with a cold light. The great Tao was right in front of them. Since they could touch Li Ruhua, that naturally meant that there was no one they couldn't kill today. Ming just suddenly said, "Junior apprentice sisterly, you don't need to worry about this. You only need to tell us everything you know. But I have to remind junior sister of something. It's best if you speak truthfully about everything because it involves the Grand Tao. You can't conceal anything at all, and once we notice that something's off, then junior sister will definitely regret it." Li Ruhua said, "Thank you for the reminder, senior apprentice brother Mingzhe. I will tell you everything I know." She lowered her head and looked down at the earth beneath her feet. In truth, the 13th floor's judgment of Mount Skyfall was somewhat wrong. This is because the great Tao has always been right in front of us. Or, to be more accurate, we are currently within the great Tao. She lifted a hand and pointed at everything around her. The sky, the earth, the air, the vegetation, the mountains and rivers, all living beings, all of this is a part of the great Tao. These words caused the expressions of the 5 disciples of the 13th floor to change. They felt that it was incomparably profound, but also appropriate. Li Ruhua wasn't lying. So it turned out that Mount Skyfall was the great Tao, not that the great Tao was hidden within. Although it seemed simple, it was like piercing through a window paper that had been blocking everyone's vision. They felt their eyes suddenly light up. Su Wei's eyes were fervent. He took a step forward and said, "Li Ruhua, speak more clearly." He felt as if he had faintly touched upon something. Li Ruhua said, "Mount Skyfall is the true, sovereign great Tao. According to my judgment, perhaps the first time I saw it, I could determine whether or not I had fate with the great Tao. If there is fate, then I can see the essence of the great Tao. Otherwise, even if I am within it, I will not be able to understand it." Eldest senior sister's expression changed. "What do you mean?" Li Ruhua lightly said, "What I mean is that senior brothers and sisters are wasting your time. If you cannot see the great Tao, then you are not fated with it. This is not something I can help you with." Eldest senior sister's pupils shrank and her face paled. Her intuition told her that Li Ruhua wasn't lying. Damn it! Why didn't she say this before? If they knew this, they wouldn't have done anything. Then now, it would be a different situation. They would protect Li Ruhua with all their might and help her obtain the Mount Skyfall Great Tao. Unfortunately, they couldn't go back. Mingzhi took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. "Junior sister Li, why must you do this?" From the start, he had harbored the thought of using Li Ruhua. But he couldn't deny that a beautiful woman could always stir up the possessiveness in a man's heart. Mingzhi had seriously considered becoming Tao companions with her in the future. But then the situation changed too quickly. He had no choice but to make a choice and cut off all possibilities between the two. Li Ruhua said, "Senior brother, are you blaming me for not telling you in advance?" Her lips curled up in a mocking smile. "But even if I told you in advance, would senior brothers and sisters believe me?" Everyone's faces stiffened, their hearts silent. They wouldn't believe it. Instead, they would think that Li Ruhua was worried they would make things difficult for her and deliberately came up with an excuse. So, regardless of whether she said it or not, as long as they had such thoughts, things would develop to this point. This was inevitable. Eldest senior sister gritted her teeth. "Junior sisterly, are you mocking us? You may have succeeded, but this will not change your fate today." She took a deep breath, her white robes icy. Junior apprentice sister Li Ruhua was surrounded by powerful enemies in Mount Skyfall and unfortunately perished. We couldn't save her in time and could only hunt down the culprits to comfort junior apprentice sister Li's soul in heaven. No one spoke. This was tacit agreement. At this point, there was no turning back. Li Ruhua had to die for them to be safe. Eldest senior sister stepped forward. "Junior apprentice sister Li, go on your way." She lifted a hand and pointed a finger. It didn't matter who killed her today. Everyone had committed a great crime of the sect. Once exposed, no one could escape punishment. So, she didn't mind killing Li Ruhua herself. After all, Mingzhi had been close to her in the past. Over this period of time, Mingzhi's emotions couldn't escape her eyes. What a lewd and lowly whore! But at this moment, eldest senior sister's expression changed. Her finger was frozen by an invisible force. Moreover, this freezing force was spreading rapidly. "Quick, kill!" Before she could finish her sentence, the head of the furious eldest senior sister exploded into pieces. It's Li Ruhua. She comprehended the great Tao. Kill her together! Together! The disciples of the 13th floor roared and attacked without hesitation. No one begged for mercy because they knew that there was no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. Today, either Li Ruhua or they would die. Li Ruhua's expression was calm. She lifted a hand and pointed. The space suddenly solidified, turning into an invisible mountain that blocked the four of them. On the other side, Mingzhi's pupils constricted violently. He turned and fled without hesitation. Ah! A scream came from behind him. It was Su Wei. They were both in the lower 10 Emperor realm. Although Su Wei's ranking was slightly higher, there wasn't much of a difference in strength between them. Su Wei was killed in the blink of an eye. If it were him, he would have suffered the same fate. Face pale, Mingzhi gritted his teeth. His body suddenly exploded into a scarlet mist of blood. His fleeing speed skyrocketed. But at this moment, his vision suddenly distorted. When his vision recovered, he was back at his original spot. Everyone but him had died a violent death. Mingzhi knelt down when he saw Li Ruhua. "Junior sister Li, please be merciful and spare my life. From now on, I am willing to follow you and pledge my loyalty to you." Li Ruhua said indifferently, "Senior brother Ming lived until now to tell you that my strength just now was only enough to kill 3 people. If senior brother and Su Wei had attacked together, I would have been the one killed." Ming's eyes widened and a trace of regret crossed his face. He knew that Li Ruhua wouldn't spare his life if she said these words. "If you want to kill me, then let's die together." Ming's pale face twisted with anger. Boom! He rushed over and self-destructed. A terrifying shockwave drowned out Li Ruhua. It took a long time for it to slowly disperse. She still stood where she was. From the surface, she didn't seem injured at all. Her eyes were cold. Li Ruhua swept her eyes over her surroundings. She flicked her sleeves and took Qin Shanglu away. After she left, several figures appeared on the battlefield, their faces dark and uncertain. The disciples of the 13th Tower had been almost completely wiped out. If this matter spread out, it would surely set off waves. After all, the image of the 13th Tower had always been that of a transcendent immortal realm. It turned out that there was such a secret killing within the sect. But this wasn't the important point. Li Ruhua had already grasped a portion of Mount Skyfall's great Tao. Otherwise, there was no other explanation for what had just happened. Should they chase after her? Everyone hesitated, struggling in their hearts. But in the end, no one dared to take the step. This was because Li Ruhua's performance just now had been too terrifying. Of the 5 disciples of the 13th Tower, Mingzhe and Su Wei were even ranked in the top 10 below the Emperor realm. If it were them, they would have died even faster. As for Li Ruhua's claim that she only had enough strength to kill 3 people, who would dare believe her? Ming's self-destruction hadn't harmed her at all. The great Tao of Mount Skyfall was likely to fall into Li Ruhua's hands. Chapter 1742. Puff! She spat out a mouthful of blood. The red plum blossoms on her chest bloomed in the wind. Li Ruhua's face was pale and her eyes were dim. She had indeed grasped a portion of the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. But using it wasn't simple at all. It was like an exchange. She could use it, but she had to pay a corresponding price. At this time, Li Ruhua's condition was terrible. She was truly an arrow at the end of its flight. Although it seemed easy to suppress and kill Mingzhe, Su Wei, and the others, the truth was that this was her limit. If it weren't for the fact that she had deliberately used Mingzhe's self-destruction to deter those spying on her, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Li Ruhua took a deep breath. She lifted a hand and pointed a finger between Qin Shanglu's eyebrows. "Ah!" He cried out and suddenly woke up. "Miss, how are you?" Li Ruhua said, "I must immediately heal myself. I cannot be disturbed during this time. Help protect me." As she spoke, blood gushed out from the corners of her lips. "Good. Miss, hurry and heal yourself." Qin Shanglu had a firm expression. "Unless they step over my dead body, no one can harm you." Li Ruhua closed her eyes, her aura gradually falling silent. This was a secret healing technique, unique to the 13th floor. It was similar to the turtle breathing art. It could cause one to fall into a state of suspended animation, stimulating one's potential and rapidly healing injuries. The advantages were obvious, but there were also flaws. Once this secret technique was used, one's perception of the outside world would be cut off and their 5 senses would fall into a deep sleep. Someone had to protect them in order to ensure their safety. Otherwise, once they closed their eyes, it was likely they would never be able to open them again. Qin Shanglu looked up at Li Ruhua's face. Some unknown emotions surged in the depths of his eyes. His current identity was a disciple of the 13th floor, a servant of the Li family elder Li Ruhua. He was a small and unremarkable character, but in the past he was the beloved son of Guanhai City Lord Qin Yuanshan, the future leader of the Qin family. In this world, there was no such thing as success without reason. For Qin Yuanshan to rise from the wilderness and become a city lord of a main city in the western wasteland, he naturally had his own lucky chance. And this lucky chance was passed on to his son, Qin Shanglu. Of course, everyone thought he had fainted, but he hadn't. Even nobodies had their own trump cards and fortuitous encounters. He was very clear about everything that was happening in the outside world, and if he wanted to, he could break free and wake up at any time. But Qin Shangolv did not. He had patiently waited until now, waiting for Li Ruhua to kill all the disciples of the 13th floor, waiting for her to lose so much of her strength that she had no choice but to use her secret technique, turtle breath, to enter a state of suspended animation. And now his chance had come. Qin Shangolv licked his dry and cracked lips. His pupils suddenly dilated, swallowing all the whites of his eyes. His eyes were pitch black like a bottomless abyss, strange and terrifying. Taking a deep breath, Qin Shanglu suppressed the agitation in his heart and raised his hand to grab Li Ruhua. Hiss! He took a deep breath, bent back, and raised his head. His face revealed a carefree, blurred expression mixed with violence and bloodthirst. Li Ruhua, who was in deep sleep, was like a piece of dead wood, without the slightest reaction. Wisps of blood-colored light flowed out of her body and into Qin Shangolv's. Through this process, he finally understood what Li Ruhua had said before. Resplendent and dazzling gold finally appeared in his world, coming from the earth beneath his feet and the sky above his head. So, this was the great Tao of the unfalling mountain. It was the great Tao, and now, this great Tao of the Emperor realm would belong to him. Once he obtained the true Emperor realm, he would become the most powerful existence in the world. At that time, all of his hatred would be repaid. The destroyed Li family would be reborn in his hands, becoming far more powerful than before. Father, do you see this? Your son has already obtained the opportunity to step onto the peak of the world. From today onwards, I will make the entire world crawl and tremble beneath my feet. Qin Yu suddenly frowned and looked into the distance. Baiji had sharp senses. What happened? Niu Dauda looked over. Qin Yu thought for a moment and said, "There was an accident. I'm considering whether or not I should intervene." Now that things had come to this, he could no longer conceal himself. Baiji was one of them. Niu Daudu trusted him completely. There was no point in acting coy anymore. Baiji frowned, dissatisfied with Qin Yu's half-truths. This made her feel even worse. Humph. He didn't say anything else. Niu Daudu was more attentive. What is it? Tell me. Maybe I can help you think. Qin Yu took a deep breath and exhaled. No need. I've thought it through. He looked at Baiji and said, "Continue in this direction, and you will soon encounter a man and a woman. The woman's name is Miaoya, and the man is a sword cultivator. Help them, and don't let anything happen to them. We'll be back soon." Baiji's eyes were cold. Qin Yu said lightly, "I think I've already made some things clear. You can refuse, but you'd better think about the consequences." Humph! Baiji coldly snorted. Her sword hummed, and she instantly flew far away. Niu Daudu shrunk her neck. Zhou Huan's sword is so powerful. Few sword cultivators I've met are sharper than her. So, you shouldn't provoke her too much or something might happen. Qin Yu smiled. "I'm not afraid. I have Miss Niu Daudu to protect me. She can't hurt me." Niu Daudu beamed with joy. She stuck out her chest. "That's for sure. Sun Chongqing is fierce, but he's still lost to me." Qin Yu earnestly nodded. "Let's go and save her. There are some things I still don't understand. I don't think I can let her be killed like this." The latter words were spoken in a soft voice, so Niu Daudu didn't hear them clearly. But she could feel Qin Yu's complex mood and didn't say anything. The two changed directions. Qin Yu grabbed Niu Dauda's hand and held away. "I never thought there would be an inheritance of the abyss-swallowing law." A calm voice sounded out in his ears, a hint of surprise in it. Qin Shanglu opened his eyes, revealing pitch-black pupils. He wasn't surprised by this voice. The true emperor of that clan didn't hide the news from him when he first spread the news. Perhaps he had already sensed it at that time. "Patriarch, if I succeed today, I will leave the 13th tower and join that clan. With Li Ruhua included, all the disciples of the 13th tower besides him had been exterminated. This would inevitably arouse suspicion. He didn't have full confidence he could hide from the various tracking methods of the 13th tower. Escaping like this was the key. After all, even if he obtained the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, it was impossible for him to immediately become a true sovereign with his current cultivation. He needed time to digest and absorb it. The patriarch smiled. Of course, I welcome you to join us. Qin Shanglu, I will remember your name. To be remembered by a true sovereign was a great honor. But at this moment, Chen Shanglu's expression was calm. Calm. This was because he had seen the great Tao and was confident he could seize it. At that time, with the great Tao in his hands, the true sovereign realm would follow. All he needed was a little bit of time. The true sovereign suddenly said, Qin Shanglu, let me give you a reminder. You should hurry up or you will be in trouble. Qin Shanglu frowned. I asked the true sovereign to make a move and buy time for me. The true sovereign refused. I can sense the situation within Skyfall Mountain, but I have no way of interfering. Take care of yourself. He wasn't optimistic about Chen Shanglu's chances. The reason he spoke to him on his own initiative was only to make sure there was a possibility. If Chen Shanglu was killed in the end, that was fine too. If all his competitors died, then the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain would belong to that clan. This was the best result. Chen Shanglu's face darkened. Where did this trouble come from? All of the cultivators in the 13th floor had been killed, and those who had come before were scared out of their wits. Could it be that it came from Skyfall Mountain itself? Soon, Qin Shanglu discovered that no matter how much he thought about it, it was useless. Only by seeing it with his own eyes would he know the truth. Zhou Huan, Yo Daodu. The moment Qin Shanglu saw these two people, alarm bells sounded in his heart. He grabbed Li Ruhua's hand and used even more strength to swallow her up. Stop! I am helping the miss heal her wounds. If you dare to approach and cause something to happen to the miss, then you will be the enemy of the 13th tower. Nyo Dauda hesitated. She looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu had a calm expression. He lightly said, swallowing Li Ruhua is also helping her heal? Qin Shanglu, who are you trying to fool? He recognized me. He actually recognized me. Chen Shanglu's pupils shrank. Deep in his heart, an intense restlessness rose up, as if he had encountered a natural enemy. His mind trembled. Before this, he had thought of attacking him, but he never had the chance. How could he have imagined that this person already had thoughts about him? Otherwise, he wouldn't have called out his name. Who are you? Chen Shanglu angrily roared. The swallowing process had already been mostly completed. In another hour at most, he would be able to take everything from Li Ruhua. But something had happened at this critical moment. Qin Shanglu's heart was filled with hate. In particular, the Zhou Huan in front of him gave him a bad feeling. His heart was suppressed to the extreme, as if he were facing the tumbling black clouds in the skies. Qin Yu said, Who I am isn't important. What's important is that you want to delay for time. The corners of his lips curled up in a mocking smile. Dream on. Ah. Qin Shanglu roared out loud. Space instantly froze, and a terrifying suppressive strength erupted. Before this, Li Ruhua had used this move to kill the elder senior apprentice, sister of the 13th floor. She had been caught off guard and had erupted in an attempt to end the two of them. When Chen Shanglu attacked, he had used his full strength. But what a pity, the target he chose today was Qin Yu. Before, Li Ruhua's feelings weren't wrong. This was because the great Tao that she saw and grasped wasn't something that belonged to her. Rather, through the connection between them, she borrowed Qin Yu's strength. This great Tao was his to begin with. Now, Chen Shanglu had used the abyss swallowing law to plunder Li Ruhua's strength and barely obtain the qualifications to borrow the strength of the great Tao. But if he were to use the strength of the great Tao that he borrowed to deal with the true master of the great Tao, it would only be a joke to himself. Qin Yu didn't attack. The great Tao's annihilating strength erupted. As it approached him, it annihilated and dissipated. He looked at Qin Shanglu, his tone faint. Now it's my turn. Pa! Qin Yu lifted a hand and snapped his fingers. Chapter 1743. In the next moment, everything within Skyfall Mountain was cut off from the outside world. The expression of the true emperor, who had been spying on Mount Tianluo, changed drastically. He discovered that his perception of Skyfall Mountain had been cut off. There was only one explanation for this. The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain had chosen a master. After a brief moment of anger, the true sovereign revealed a thoughtful expression. Gradually, excitement appeared in his eyes. Because of the eruption of the Tao accumulation, the entire Skyfall Mountain had become a mess. In order to compete for the ownership of the great Tao, cultivators from all over began slaughtering each other, including Li Ruhua. Everyone that was connected to the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain had fallen into trouble. They could no longer solve the great Tao in peace. And from beginning to end, the only ones that hadn't been disturbed were the 24 people of that clan. They had gathered together and worked together to solve the great Tao, and now they had succeeded. This was the most reasonable explanation that the true sovereign could think of, and it was also the result he was most willing to believe. But the matters of the world couldn't be changed by a single person's will. Not even a true sovereign could. He had to confirm it. Shua, the true sovereign's figure, instantly vanished. In the next moment, he arrived in the giant space beneath the city lord mansion. The 24 stone statues were covered in countless blood vessels. They wove together in the air, turning into blood-red eggshells that wrapped around the stone statues. Patriarch! The elder that had been guarding here bowed. The true sovereign said, I have lost my perception of the interior of Skyfall Mountain. The elder's complexion changed. Then he reacted. His eyes widened and excitement appeared on his face. Patriarch! Patriarch! The true sovereign nodded. Right now, I don't have 100% confidence, but there is a high probability that this is the case. He closed his eyes and his divine sense instantly spread out, covering the 24 stone statues. Soon, the true sovereign opened his eyes, a smile on his face. They've succeeded. True sovereigns were all existences that had stepped onto the heavenly great Tao, so they could sense each other. Now, the true sovereign could feel the aura of the great Tao from the 24 stone statues in front of him. It was confirmed. The elder's face flushed red. He knelt to the ground and laughed into the heavens. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha. Good. The heavens haven't forsaken my clan. From today onwards, our race will have one more true emperor, and we will be able to suppress the world. Who would dare to covet it? The true emperor also had a big smile on his face. He was glad that he had made the decision to abandon Mount Tianluo. It was fortunate that he had staked everything on a single throw, resulting in such an outcome. If he had continued to keep it in his hands, he might not have been able to obtain any results even after thousands or tens of thousands of years. However, he didn't know exactly who obtained the acknowledgement of the Grand Tao this time. 327? Indeed, among the younger generation, he was indeed the best, the one with the greatest possibility. But 480 isn't bad either. The true emperor of the clan had never felt so happy before. No matter who it was, the one who obtained the great Tao of Tianluo Mountain was a member of that clan. That was enough. Finally, in the Middle Wasteland, they could straighten their backs and speak. The battle with the Western Desolation over the broken world of the Southwest Desolation region had come to an end. Humph! One clan and 2 true emperors. How could Shi Huang not lower its head? Believe it or not, they can directly attack the imperial capital, unite the western wilderness, and overthrow the rule of Emperor Zhou. On Mount Tianluo, after Qin Yu snapped his fingers, Chen Shangle across from him trembled. Fear gushed out from the depths of his eyes. He suddenly discovered that he had already lost control of the great Tao. It was clearly in front of him, but it seemed so far away. It was unreachable. Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to waste time with Qin Shangolf. He still had many things he needed to do. He flicked his sleeves. Space instantly twisted, sucking in Qin Shangolf. "No, I can't accept this. I won't." His howls came to an abrupt end. Space twisted and flattened, as if it had never appeared. Like this, Qin Shangolf would forever vanish. In the end, a minor character would always be a minor character. Even if they were fated to become the bringer of the tide, they still couldn't escape their final fate. Putong, Li Ruhua paled. She seemed to have lost too much blood, and her aura was extremely weak. She fell to the ground. Niu Daodu looked at Qin Yu. "The one you want to save is her?" She subconsciously bit her lips. Qin Yu nodded. "Miss Niu, there is no need to think too much about it. She and I do know each other, but our friendship isn't too deep. The only reason I saved her today is to resolve a doubt in my heart." As he spoke, he realized that there was no need to explain anything. He didn't have any reckless thoughts towards Niu Daodu. The old ox family couldn't be provoked. But Niu Daodu was clearly overthinking things. After listening to Qin Yu's explanation, she said in a soft voice, "I believe you." "Qin Yu, what? You believe me again?" No, he had to hurry and stay far away from Niu Daodu. If he stirred up trouble and the old ox family accused him of using her and then abandoning her, would he still be able to live? As he thought about the strong men of the ox family and then about Niu Dingtian, his heart trembled. Luckily, the matter of Skyfall Mountain was about to come to an end. Cough. I'll have to trouble Miss Niu to take care of her for the time being. Niu Daodu nodded. She pulled Li Ruhua into the range of the void bead. She looked at her chest and then at herself, her smile becoming increasingly bright. She was big. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He pretended not to see. "Let's go. There might be problems if Baiji goes alone to save her." "Okay." Outside Skyfall Mountain, within the 13th tower, the martial sovereign no longer cared about the true sovereign's warning. "That clan. Nearly all of my tower's disciples have died. We will definitely investigate this matter to the end. You true sovereigns look down on my boundary, but my 13th tower also has more than one true sovereign." He took out a talisman. With a flick of his finger, it ignited and turned to ashes. He bowed and respectfully said, "I ask the true sovereign to descend and uphold justice for the disciples of my 13th tower." Bang! Space shattered in the skies. A giant vortex appeared out of thin air. It rumbled as it revolved, setting off a heaven-shaking momentum. A figure stepped out from the vortex. He wore black robes and held a white jade horsetail whisk in his hands. Divine light surged in his eyes, as if there were 4 moons and rivers of stars swirling within them. "I already know of this matter. I have come on the orders of the Tower Master to demand an explanation." The Taoist slowly spoke. Each word was like an explosion of thunder, reverberating through the world. On the ground, the complexions of the cultivators responsible for maintaining order changed. They revealed pained expressions. Bang, bang, bang. Heads exploded on the spot. Then their bodies disintegrated, turning into blood energy that held away. That clan had no name, no surname, no roots, no roots. They didn't belong to the 5 elements of the 3 realms. They had jumped out of samsara. To them, death was also a new life. This was a nearly eternal and indestructible state, an incomplete state of being a long-lived species. Of course, everything in this world came with a price. In order to obtain this sort of undying and indestructible ability, what survived were the mortal body and soul. But their consciousness was constantly destroyed and reborn. That clan was still the same clan, still upholding their original aspirations. But besides the true sovereign patriarch and a small number of powerful elders, how many people were still the same as before? This was the sorrow of that clan. It was also the driving force behind their desperate desire to change their destiny. No one hoped that, as they lived, they would become someone else. Bang! Space shook, like a giant stone falling into the sea. A towering figure arrived in time once more. The true sovereign of that clan was enraged. Cheongji, if you dare to touch my clansmen again, I will not let this matter rest. The Taoist named Cheongji, who wore black robes and held a white jade whisk, had a faint look in his eyes. I would like to know just why the patriarch will not let this matter rest. He stepped forwards. With a loud rumble, the world surged and a wild aura shook the world. The patriarch didn't take a single step back. The auras of the two true sovereigns were like two towering mountains that collided together. In that instant, a destructive strength was released that swept out in all directions. The scene in front of them surpassed everyone's expectations. First, they didn't think that the one that came from the 13th tower would be the one with the heaviest, murderous nature, Cheongji. As soon as he arrived, he killed so many cultivators of that clan. Second, they didn't think that the patriarch would be so forceful today, directly confronting Cheongji. A great battle between true sovereigns was about to begin. Once again, this wasn't the right time. If it were somewhere else, the true sovereigns present would love nothing more than to see them shed a mouthful of hair. They wouldn't care even if their heads were broken. But now, Tianluo Mountain was right in front of them. Niu Dingtian suddenly took a step forward. Like an axe that could split open the sky, he slashed down and forcefully thrust into the two's auras. If you want to fight, no problem. You can go to the sky beyond heaven or somewhere else. But not here. His tone was resolute and sonorous. With the powerful aura of 1 against 2, no one dared to ignore Niu Dingtian's attitude, especially after they suspected that he had reached the peak of the great Tao Emperor realm. That's right. The two of you should restrain yourselves. Don't ruin the opportunities of the juniors. Fellow Taoist Cheongji, the Tower Master called you here today to investigate the truth, not to provoke a battle between true sovereigns. There are opportunities of the great Tao in Tianluo Mountain. Naturally, there are hidden dangers. Once you enter, it will be up to fate. How can we cause trouble for you? The projections of the true sovereigns expressed their attitudes. Cheongji sneered, and his eyes fell on Niu Dingtian. I don't think you had enough of the previous battle. When this matter is over, I will ask the Tower Master for permission to fight you. Niu Dingtian's expression was calm. Sure. His tone was extremely calm. The clan leader took a step back, his face expressionless. Cheongji, I will not let you off the hook for killing my clansmen. Hua! Everyone looked over. They suddenly felt that the clan leader was very confident at this moment. They were all old and shrewd characters. How could they not notice that something was amiss? Now, their eyes were filled with surprise. Could it be that the great Tao in Tianluo Mountain had been obtained by that clan? After all, if it was just a mere emperor realm cultivator of 300 years, how could he have such confidence? Niu Dingtian was unperturbed. He didn't care about any of this. He sneered inwardly. He didn't know if the clan leader had gone mad or something. He dared to openly challenge the 13th tower, but the great Tao in Tianluo Mountain. Humph, he could forget about it, because Little Meat had arrived. Although Niu Dingtian didn't know what the once perfect immortal species and the amazing young man were planning, and what they were secretly planning, Niu Dingtian didn't know at all. But since Little Meat had made a move, there was no chance of a fluke. That clan absolutely couldn't escape her schemes. Losing one's wife and 1 soldiers was probably the lightest punishment. Perhaps they would even be tricked and suffer a great loss. Chapter 1744. Niu Dingtian's guess was quite accurate. However, he had underestimated one thing. Not only had Little Meaty set up a trap in Heavenfall Mountain, but Qin Yu had also added insult to injury. He did not mind completely exterminating that clan. Now, The true emperor's perception of the situation in Mount Tianluo had been cut off. The cultivators of that clan naturally couldn't do anything about it. After receiving his reminder, the long-awaited drama was finally about to begin. However, there was still time. He might as well have the 24 people of that clan help Qin Yu unseal his great Tao. He had to find Baiji and Miaoya first. As for that sword cultivator, Qin Yu was curious. Just what was the relationship between him and that sword cultivator? Big brother Wei, leave by yourself. I can't escape. Miaoya's face was pale, and there was still blood at the corner of his mouth. Previously, the two of them had already escaped from danger. It was she who didn't know the severity of the situation and sent out a distress signal. In the end, the 3 cultivators who were also disciples of the Black Marsh tribe tried to kill the 2 of them. Even though he was beaten back by Wei Han, he was also seriously injured. He was being chased by a group of cultivators, and the situation was becoming worse and worse. Miaoya knew that everything was her fault, and her heart was filled with regret. How dare these people attack her? Were they not afraid of being investigated by the sect if word of this got out? Wei Han slashed out with his sword, sending a cultivator who tried to sneak up on him flying. He didn't even turn around, leaving her with a solid back view. It has nothing to do with you. It's the people of this world that are evil. He had originally thought that after what had happened in the past, his heart had already calmed down. But in Tianluo Mountain, he met Miaoya, a girl who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. In other people's eyes, she was 80 points, but in his eyes, 120 points. Don't worry, I will definitely bring you out alive. Miaoya teared up. Loud laughter suddenly rang out. It's a small world. Wei Han, it's really you. Whoosh, whoosh. The 3 sword cultivators whistled through the air. The powerful and sharp aura caused people's hearts to palpitate. The people surrounding him all retreated with fear on their faces. One of them laughed heartily as he stared at Wei Han with an amused look in his eyes. Zheng Chu. Wei Han let out a low growl as his killing intent erupted. Formless sword qi burst out of his body, causing cracks to appear in the space. The memories that had been sealed in the deepest recesses of his mind, memories that he didn't want to recall, now surged, causing his eyes to quickly turn red. The 3 sword cultivators frowned slightly before regaining their composure. He had some strength, but that was all. This was the vision and pride of a disciple of a sword Dao family. Junior brother Zheng, do you know this person? Zheng Chu smiled faintly. Long ago, there was a grudge between them. His cultivation was crippled and he was expelled. I didn't expect that he would live to this day. He was smiling, but his eyes were cold and his heart was filled with killing intent. To think that a cripple would actually possess such frightening strength. Just now, when he was locked on by the blood-red eye, his heart pounded and he instinctively felt fear. The intuition of a sword cultivator was usually very accurate. This meant that Wei Han had the ability to threaten him today. Such a Wei Han naturally deserved to die. If you don't remove the roots when cutting weeds, they will grow again when the spring wind blows. Junior apprentice brother Zheng is just in time to end this hidden danger. The man smiled. I am willing to lend junior apprentice brother a hand. Thank you, senior brother. Zheng Chu lifted his hand and a sword hummed. Wei Han, let me see what methods you have now. Wei Han roared out loud and pushed Miaoya away. Hurry and run. Previously, he had risked his life to protect Miaoya. But when Zheng Chu appeared, everything changed. He knew that he couldn't escape today. If Miaoya continued to stay by his side, she would only be killed. Zheng Chu said, Senior apprentice brother, I will kill Wei Han myself. Please leave this woman behind. Okay. The man lifted his sword. Wherever the sword pointed, space suddenly twisted. Miaoya, who was pushed away, revealed a look of despair. She was already severely injured, and without Wei Han's protection, she couldn't avoid this sword. No, Wei Han shouted out loud. He desperately tried to rush over, but Jiang Chu was already blocking him. He smiled. Back then, I wanted you to kneel on the ground and watch me personally kill your teacher and junior apprentice sister. Today, I will let you watch this woman die with your own eyes. Wei Han, I am destined to be your nightmare for the rest of your life. Don't even think about escaping. I will kill you. Wei Han roared out loud. He slashed out with his sword. Jiang Chu's sword collided with his. Two powerful sword cultivators fought with their lives on the line. Terrifying sword breaths splashed out, instantly tearing apart the earth. But his sword couldn't kill Jiang Chu. If he couldn't kill him, he naturally couldn't save Miaoya. Wei Han's eyes turned blood red. His heart was filled with anger and despair. At this moment, a sword hummed. The sword that slashed at Miaoya was cut in half. With a mournful wail, it disintegrated. Who? The sword cultivator was shocked and angry. Shua, Baiji's figure landed. She glanced over. You are Miaoya? Miaoya, who had just escaped death, hurriedly nodded. Then she was right. Baiji said, stand behind me. After speaking, she stepped forward. Whoosh, a sword hummed. The sword cultivator that killed Miao landed in front of her. Japanese Wang family's disciple, Wang Shangqi, greets Fairy Maiden. May I ask which sect Fairy Maiden comes from? I am willing to prepare a generous gift for the old ancestor to personally propose marriage. He had taken a liking to this female sword cultivator at first glance. Baiji frowned. She raised her sword and slashed. Wang Shangqi's expression changed. He suddenly raised his sword, but he was still a bit too slow. A trace of blood appeared on the corner of his eyebrows. He was shocked and angry. He gritted his teeth and shouted, Fairy Maiden, you are too arrogant. Is the disciple of the Japanese Wang family not worthy of you? Baiji raised her hand and slashed again. This sword was heavier than before. The moment the sword hummed, Wang Shangqi's pupils shrank. He was shocked and angry. He didn't expect that the woman in front of him had held back in the previous two attacks. With a loud bellow, Wang Shangqi wielded his sword with both hands and heavily pierced out. This sword strike had the aura of a surging river flowing east, exuding an extraordinary aura. This was none other than the river sword art of the Wang clan, an aristocratic clan of swordsmen. The two sword breaths were as fast as lightning. They instantly collided. Wang Shangqi was sent flying. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose, and his face was pale. His hands that held the sword trembled slightly. This sword almost sent the immortal sword in his hand flying. If that was really the case, it would be a great humiliation for sword cultivators. There was no need to mention the marriage proposal anymore. Do it! Kill her! Wang Shangqi roared angrily. The other sword cultivator from the Wang family joined the battle without any hesitation. Wang Shangqi was one of the most valued sons of the current Wang family patriarch. Protecting Wang Shangqi's safety was Miao Yijian's most important task in entering Mount Tianluo. He was sent by the Japanese Wang family to protect an important son of the Wang family. He was very powerful. In fact, in the awkward situation where there were no martial emperors in the world, Miao Yijian's peak sovereign realm strength was only slightly weaker than the Wang family patriarch. Of course, just like the Jin family who had the heaven-splitting sword, the Wang family also had the peerless Great River Sword. The Wang family patriarch could fight against a half-step martial emperor. He couldn't compare. But now, after entering Mount Tianluo, Miao Yijian was bestowed a powerful immortal sword by the Wang family. It was very compatible with the sword art he cultivated, allowing him to burst out with unparalleled battle strength. Baiji soon felt the pressure. But what she didn't know was that Miao Yijian was even more surprised. He didn't know when a peak sovereign realm female sword cultivator had appeared in the world. Earth realm. Compared to him, she was only slightly weaker. And what made Miao Yijian even more jealous was that Baiji's sword aura was vast and majestic, like the rising sun, full of vitality and endless vitality. Unlike his sword aura, which seemed perfect and flawless, it was old and lost the possibility of improvement when cultivated to the peak. In this life, his sword cultivation had reached the limit, and it was impossible for him to break through the heavenly being door. And this was undoubtedly the greatest tragedy for a sword cultivator who had reached the human realm. Miao Yijian, kill her! Wang Shangqi roared angrily. At this moment, the people who had retreated were eager to try again, and their eyes were all focused on Miaoya. Wei Han was powerful, and now he was fighting with Zheng Chu. It was not easy to interfere in a battle between two great sword cultivators. If they were not careful, they would be caught in the crossfire. It was more reliable to kill Miaoya. Although Bai Ji was powerful, Miao Yijian was not weak either. The two of them were fighting, and Miaoya could only keep retreating. Just a little more, and she would be able to attack soon. Miaoya sensed the cold gazes from all around, and the dangerous aura they exuded. But she had no choice. The aftermath of the battle in front of her forced her to keep retreating, or she would be caught in it. Do it! Capture this woman. She has the secret of the Tianluo mountain Dao. Everyone who had been waiting for an opportunity attacked almost at the same time. Bai Ji frowned. Miao Yijian, who was opposite her, attacked even faster, forcing her to be unable to save her. But at this moment, there were people who were faster than them, and the cultivators who rushed towards Miaoya were all sent flying. One of them even had his chest pierced by a punch, and when he fell to the ground, he was no longer breathing. Could it be that they are here to save me again? It was just like what happened to Baiji. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Just as Miaoya thought about it, someone grabbed her neck. Go! The three of them rushed into the sky. The people who were beaten back were full of anger and unwillingness, but no one dared to stop them. That was because the three people who had attacked were simply too powerful. One punch killed one person on the spot. The one who was killed was not a nobody, and his strength was almost on par with theirs. Damn it! Since when were there three people with such fierce strength in Tianluo Mountain? Moreover, they were unfamiliar faces. Miaoya! Wei Han shouted, and his sword moved even faster. But not only did he fail to force Zheng Chu to retreat, but he was also stabbed, and his clothes were soaked with blood. Zheng Chu sneered. You dare to be distracted while fighting with me? You're courting death. But that woman is not bad-looking. Now that she has fallen into the hands of three men, it's hard to say what will happen next. Wei Han roared from the depths of his throat, I'll kill you! Zhang Chu laughed. If you have the strength, do as you please. On the other side, Miao Yijian was expressionless and his eyes were cold. Woman, your opponent today is me. He used the scattered sword technique, and the sword breath was like rain, covering every inch of the space, sealing Bai Ji inside. Chapter 1745. The three men who captured Miaoya were all dressed in black. They were silent as they ran, and their auras were as cold as stone. Miaoya, who was held by the neck, felt the coldness in their palms. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Her intuition told her that she would not be able to escape this time. Wei Han, she closed her eyes. Right at this moment, the three of them suddenly stopped in their tracks. Although it is a bit presumptuous to say this, she is one of us. Can you return her to us? One man, two women. It was a strange combination. In particular, one of the women was still unconscious and being carried by another woman. The one who spoke was Qin Yu. He looked at one of the men in black and sighed inwardly. It was really a small world. There were bad karma everywhere. This person was none other than the man he had met on the ferry, the man he had sized up before entering the Heavenfall Mountains. It's you. The other party spoke. He remembered him. Sure enough, his previous observation had been noticed. Qin Yu thought for a moment and said, You three, I have no intention of becoming enemies with the ancient remnant race. Return her to me, and I will let this matter go." The expressions of the three people changed drastically. The man in black stepped forward. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He had directly pointed out his identity. This was an invisible threat, trying to make the three people back down. Obviously, his plan had failed. There was no way to settle this peacefully today. Qin Yu stretched out his hand and pulled Niu Daodu, saying, "Look after her. Leave the rest to me." He could not let Niu Daodu take action. Otherwise, the Niu family would have another great enemy. Although the ancient remnant race was now being chased by the great Qin dynasty, their strength could not be underestimated. Sometimes it was necessary to trick one's teammates, but it also depended on the situation. Not now. Qin Yu wanted to save people. This was his own matter. He could not involve the Niu family. Moreover, old Niu was very scary. Niu Dingtian was not easy to fool. It was better to bear the responsibility himself. He took a step forward, instantly appearing beside the black-clothed man. He punched out. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the black-clothed man was sent flying. His body plowed through the ground, creating a long crack. Qin Yu frowned. Beyond his expectations, this person's combat strength hadn't been knocked away by his fist. He swayed and stood up. His eyes locked onto Qin Yu. "The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, so it was you who obtained it." The air suddenly fell silent. Niu Daoda's eyes widened, but when she thought about it seriously, it seemed that Zhou Huan had stopped hiding this matter from the moment she saved Li Ruhua. It was just that she didn't think too much about it, or rather, she didn't want to think too much. The eyes of the other, two black-clothed men became scorching hot, and their breathing became heavier. "Are you sure?" One of them said. The person fighting with Qin Yu nodded. "I am." Bang! Miaoyu was flung away. Their only goal was the great path in Tianluo Mountain. Since they had found the master, they naturally had no interest in anyone else. However, when they pushed Miaoyu away, it was obvious that the person who grabbed her did not want her to continue living. He used a lot of force. Although Qin Yu's thoughts moved and he helped her offset most of the strength, Miaoyu still tumbled backwards several times and vomited great mouthfuls of blood. "Do it! Kill him! The great path is ours!" The three black-clothed men grabbed their hair and tore it apart. Zila! Their skin was directly torn off, revealing black flesh and blood. Now, as their skin trembled, fine scales began to appear, covering every inch of their bodies. At the same time, crackling sounds of bones filled the air. The three people rapidly grew, reaching over 10 feet in the blink of an eye. These were the true bodies of the ancient remnants. Bang, bang, bang. The ground cracked open. The three ancient remnants rushed forwards at the same time, their speed faster than lightning. Qin Yu lifted a hand and grasped it in front of him. The space in front of him instantly froze. Like an invisible swamp, it covered them all. Agudu Hadoliai Mulberry. The three ancient remnants began to utter strange syllables at the same time. The space that trapped them began to shake. The three of them soon regained their ability to move. Niu Daoda loudly shouted, "Zhou Huan, be careful! This is the chaos curse of the ancient remnants. It can even threaten a true sovereign." Chaos curse? Qin Yu took a step back, avoiding the sharp claws. But at this time his complexion changed. His foot, that was about to land, abruptly deviated from its original position and moved half a step to the left. In the next moment, there was the sound of howling wind in his ears. Several strands of hair fell in front of him. Just a little bit more. Just now, if it weren't for him promptly sensing that something was wrong, his entire head would have been smashed to smithereens by that claw. This was the ability of the Chaos Curse. It could interfere with a cultivator's sense and control the rules of the outside world, causing everything to fall into a state of chaos. Only the bloodline of the ancient remnants wouldn't be affected. No wonder they still dared to attack Qin Yu, even though they knew he had grasped a portion of the Skyfall Mountain Great Tao. The three ancient remnants didn't pause at all. They rushed forwards once more. The low roars of the chaos curse continued to echo in his ears. Moreover, it became increasingly fast, giving off a stifling feeling. Qin Yu was incomparably cautious, but in the following short period of time he encountered dangers again and again, barely managing to avoid them each time. A gash was torn open on his chest, but he didn't feel any pain. Instead, he felt a faint numbness. Poison! Across from him, the ancient remnant that succeeded placed the black claw in his mouth and gently licked it. His eyes brightened. You taste very good. I will slowly eat you up. Just as Niu Doubda moved, Qin Yu raised a hand to stop her. He didn't turn his head. Don't interfere in this matter. An ancient remnant roared. That's right, Niu Doubda. Don't think that you can be fearless just because you are wearing the great Tao's golden armor. My race's chaos curse is enough to tear it apart bit by bit. Niu Dingtian might be strong, but since he has offended the saints, all that awaits him is death. Hurry up and scram. Don't provoke trouble for yourself. Niu Doubda clenched her teeth, but before she could speak, Qin Yu smiled. You three, you seem to be too optimistic. If I didn't have some real methods, would I dare to come to Skyfall Mountain? I let you leave because I didn't want to form enmity with the ancient remnants. But now, it seems that there is a reason why you have fallen to such a state. He tapped his forehead. Do you see? Brains, they lack brains. Kill him. With angry roars, the three ancient remnants rushed forwards. Qin Yu lifted a hand and grasped forwards. The suppressive strength of the great Tao descended. Across from him, the eyes of the three ancient remnants revealed a mocking and awe-inspiring look. To others, the suppression of a true sovereign's great Tao was incomprehensible. But the saints had never feared it. The person in front of them only had big words, and his methods were the same as before. Next, they would tear him to pieces and swallow up the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. Hum! The cry of a sword echoed in her ears. Niu Doubda cried out and subconsciously closed her eyes. Even so, she couldn't help but tear up. Her eyes felt sore and swollen. Her ears fell silent. The hurried, strange, and chaotic incantations disappeared. She rubbed her eyes and endured the discomfort to open them. She saw Qin Yu carrying the unconscious Miaoya as he walked towards them, and she could no longer see the figures of those three ancient remnants. They had vanished into thin air, as if they had never appeared. Dead. Niu Doubda's face was filled with disbelief. Qin Yu nodded. Niu Doubda looked at him, speechless. Qin Yu coughed. Before, I didn't mean to hide behind you. It wasn't convenient for me to do anything at the time. I could only do so not too long ago. Niu Doubda said, I believe you. She stared at Qin Yu. Did you really obtain the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain? This was a bit awkward. No matter how it was said, this was partly due to Miss Niu's efforts. Qin Yu thought for a moment. I didn't completely obtain it, but most of it, that's right, it is my great Tao. Things had already come this far, and he still had to hide it. He was looking down on himself. Niu Doubda patted his shoulder. Zhou Huan, you are too fierce. With so many people fighting over it and fighting to the death, you actually managed to take advantage of it. She suddenly frowned. No, that's not what you said at the start. You even said that I was the one who caused the changes in Skyfall Mountain. Qin Yu had an awkward expression. He was thinking about how to explain. Niu Doubda waved her hand. Don't say anything. Remember that you owe me a great favor. You will have to return it in the future. Qin Yu earnestly nodded. Of course. He looked at Niu Doubda and smiled. This was because after this girl learned that the great Tao belonged to someone else, she didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, she exuded a heartfelt happiness for him. Niu Doubda was truly a good girl. He had no idea just which boy she would end up with in the future. Thinking about it, although she was a bit pure and didn't have many thoughts, she definitely wouldn't suffer a loss. What nonsense. With the old cow's family's lineup, after marrying Nyo Daodu, even if they ate the heart of a bear or the gall of a leopard, they still wouldn't dare to be rude to her. That was just seeking death. He picked up another woman who was also unconscious. Luckily, Nyo Daodu was here. Otherwise Qin Yu would never have been able to explain himself. Let's go. Let's hurry up and gather everyone. We still have official business to attend to. Qin Yu impatiently delivered a great gift to that clan. He grabbed Nyo Daodu and stepped forwards. The group instantly vanished from sight. As he unraveled more and more of his Tao, the connection between Qin Yu and Skyfall Mountain became even closer. Using spatial shifting was also a matter of course. Baiji was annoyed. She didn't care about Qin Yu, but she was annoyed that she couldn't even handle such a small matter. Once this news reached the madam's ears, she would definitely feel that she was useless. When would she be willing to let her go back? Thinking of this, she moved her sword even faster. She hated that she couldn't chop Miao Yijian into meat paste. Wang Shangqi's face was full of anger. Miao Yijian, hurry up and take her down, or I won't forgive you. Miao Yijian frowned, a cold light flashing in his eyes. If not for the Wang family's great kindness, and the Wang family's old ancestor strength was indeed terrifying, he would have killed Wang Shangqi with a single sword strike. He hated that he could not kill Wang Shangqi with a single sword strike. How dare a piece of trash give him orders in front of him? Humph! He coldly snorted, venting his anger on Baiji. Little girl, today I let you experience the methods of a peak sword cultivator. Boom! His aura crazily rose at this moment. The sword breath that rained down from the sky suddenly became fierce. Experts who were stuck at the peak of the sovereign realm and had stepped into the mortal realm were unable to break through the threshold of the Deva realm. Miao Yijian naturally wouldn't waste time, so he researched a method that could greatly increase his combat strength in a short period of time. Baiji's complexion changed. In an instant, her dress was cut open, with dozens of tears. Blood gushed out. Miao Yijian's attacks were bold and decisive, a complete change from his previous mellow and flawless style. He forcefully put Baiji at a disadvantage. On the other side, Zheng Chu relaxed. He smiled. Wei Han, why haven't you died yet? Why bother holding on? Just stick out your head and I'll cut it down. Isn't that easy? Across from him, Wei Han was bathed in blood. His aura was chaotic and he could only hold on under the suppression of the sword breath. He was on the verge of collapse. Hearing this, his blood-red eyes flashed. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me. Zheng Chu laughed. Good ambition, but I'm afraid you won't have the chance. Who said I won't have the chance? With the sound of breaking air, Qin Yu and Nyo Daodu brought the unconscious Li Ruhua and Miao Yi flying over from the distance. Wei Han's eyes widened. He slashed out with his sword, completely risking his life to forcefully force Zheng Chu to draw back. Of course, this was also because Zheng Chu didn't dare to forcefully stop Qin Yu and the others who had suddenly appeared. Whoosh! Wei Han appeared in front of Qin Yu. He stubbornly stared at Miao Yi, who was standing beside Nyo Daodu. She's still alive, Qin Yu lightly said. Wei Han let out a long breath. It was a very long breath. It was as if he had swallowed all the depression and despair in his heart. Just now he had really thought of dying here. It was only his intense hatred that had supported him until this moment. Miao Yi was still alive. As his heart relaxed, his legs buckled, and he half knelt on the ground. Qin Yu, he thought for a moment and said, I accept your kneel. I will help you settle today's grudge. Chapter 1746. Some people were enemies the moment they opened their mouths. For instance, Qin Yu today. Zheng Chu coldly sneered. Help him settle his grudge? You might as well die in his place. He leapt forwards and slashed out with his sword. This sword strike was even stronger than the one that erupted when he fought with Wei Han. He had used his full strength without holding anything back. This sword strike was originally prepared to erupt when he killed Wei Han. His goal was to avoid being dragged down to the grave by Wei Han. If a formidable sword cultivator harbored the will to die, they would be a terrifying existence. But now, Zheng Chu didn't dare to hide anymore. He didn't know who Qin Yu was, but he could feel a dangerous aura coming from him. The most straightforward evidence was that the 3 men who had just captured Miao Yu were now missing, and Miao Yu was in their hands. From this, it wasn't difficult to make some logical guesses. How could Zheng Chu dare to hold back? This sword strike was vast and mighty. It was also the Japanese Wang family's river sword art, but it was almost twice as strong as Wang Shangqi's. He could hear the roar of a river in his ears. With a loud rumble, his momentum soared to the heavens. For so many years, Zheng Chu had been hiding his true strength. As for the reason, he was an outsider, yet he was better at practicing the Wang family's direct sword technique. What did he want? But unfortunately, this didn't have any meaning to Qin Yu. Zheng Chu wasn't an ancient remnant. He didn't have a chaos curse that could break through the suppression of the great Tao. To him, the only good news was that Qin Yu didn't plan on exposing the fact that he grasped the great Tao in front of everyone. So, he could die with a bit more dignity. That's right, Zheng Chu was going to die. Good news couldn't change this outcome. Qin Yu stepped forwards. Space twisted, sucking him and Zheng Chu in. In the next moment, a heaven-shaking sword cry echoed out from the distorted space. Zheng Chu screamed, "You are also a sword cultivator!" After several breaths of time, the sword cry came to an abrupt end. The spatial distortion faded away. Qin Yu's original appearance was restored. With a loud bang, Zheng Chu fell into the ground. Blood flowed out from all over his body. Looking at his twisted body, it was unknown how many sword wounds had cut through his muscles and bones. "I thought you would be willing to kill him with your own hands, so I left him alive." Wei Han struggled to stand up. He walked to Zheng Chu's side, his eyes wide with fear. "No, don't!" Puff! The sword in his hand fell, and a large head was cut off. Hot blood spurted out a few feet away. Wei Han lowered his head and looked at the rolling heads. His eyes were serious and persistent, as if he was admiring an exquisite work of art. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he turned in front of Qin Yu and fell to his knees, kowtowing. "No matter who you are, I, Wei Han, owe you a great favor. In the future, no matter what it is, so long as you ask, I will definitely not refuse." Qin Yu thought to himself, "This young man's words aren't small, but your life might not even be yours anymore. Do you really think you can decide everything for yourself?" However, gratitude was a virtue. He nodded and glanced at Niu Daodu. Niu Daodu placed Miao Yu in front of him. "Her injuries are quite serious, but I've already given her medicine. She'll be fine." Wei Han nodded. "Thank you, miss." He got up and hugged her tightly. He couldn't do this kind of thing too much, as it was easy to get beaten up. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He turned to look at Baiji. "Do you need help?" Baiji's face was cold. "No need." Qin Yu said, "Oh." When Miao Yijin attacked, his body suddenly froze. He could only watch helplessly as the blade pierced through his throat. Blood instantly gushed out. Baiji angrily roared, "Zhou Huan!" Qin Yu raised his hands. "I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. How could I have so much time? Let's see how stubborn you are. In any case, there's no evidence and you can't beat me. Efficiency first." Wang Shangqi's face was pale, and his face was full of fear. He didn't run because he knew that it was impossible to escape. "I am a direct descendant of the Japanese Wang family. If you dare to kill me—" Puff! Baiji cut off his head with her sword. Her eyes were cold as she stared at Qin Yu. This woman was really violent. Niu Daodu was better. Gentle and gentle girls were the cuter ones. Qin Yu lightly coughed. His eyes swept around. Just as he was about to retreat, he suddenly said, "Everyone, don't worry. Although you made some mistakes before, I have never liked killing people. Everyone. Zhen Chu was the first to die, followed by Miao Yijian and then Wang Shangqi. The Japanese Wang family was one of the rare swordsmanship families in the world. None of the three had managed to escape. Now you say such words? Like hell I'll believe you. Not only did they not stop, but they retreated even faster. Their eyes were filled with fear and dread. There was nothing they could do. They could only use their ultimate move. Qin Yu raised a hand and shouted, "Do you want to seize the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain?" The air suddenly fell silent. The retreating crowd subconsciously stopped. This was the original sin of greed. If everyone knew how to be content and knew when to advance and retreat, there would be far fewer deaths. Qin Yu continued, "I have already discovered the conspiracy of that clan. Yes, it is them. Everyone. Do you think that the sudden eruption of their Tao means that the great Tao is about to recognize a master, and that clan will not be moved? This is absolutely impossible. But until now, I can guarantee that no one here has encountered a single cultivator from that clan in Skyfall Mountain. What do you think is the reason?" Everyone's complexion changed. Qin, you didn't give them time to think. He clapped his hands together. "That's right. That is because, as you and I are crazily slaughtering each other and fighting for the Tao, the cultivators of that clan are secretly gathering in one place and secretly plotting to seize the great Tao. Is this true?" A cultivator frowned and shouted out. Qin Yu nodded. "Of course. I have already discovered where they are. As long as you follow me, the truth will naturally be revealed. Why should we believe you? And if you really discovered something like this, why are you telling us?" Another person spoke up, his face full of vigilance. "Brat, you are quite cautious, but I won't play with you." Qin Yu had no expression. "It's up to you whether you believe me or not. When the great Tao falls into the hands of that clan, don't regret it. As for why I am telling you, it is because we do not have full confidence that we can resist that clan alone. We can only unite everyone's strength. You can tell this matter to anyone you trust and guide them here with us. As long as there are enough people, I don't think you need to fear that we will plot against you." This was the truth. No matter how strong Qin Yu and Baiji were, it was impossible for them to fight 100 people alone. And in Skyfall Mountain, there are far more than several thousand people fighting for the great Tao. Some people were still hesitating, but others had already begun to move. The news spread out with all sorts of methods at the fastest possible speed. Qin Yu turned and walked away. "If you are willing to follow me, then follow me from afar. I will personally expose that clan's plot." Baiji leaned over. She coldly said, "Just what do you want to do?" Qin Yu smiled. "I want to do something that makes me happy." He glanced at her and lifted a hand. "Don't worry, I won't delay the madam's arrangements." "Humph." Baiji turned and drew back. As he thought, bringing up Midi was the best way to deal with her. This woman had likely lost her mind. She actually dared to have such improper thoughts towards Midi. It really wasn't easy for her to live until now. Wei Han thought for a moment and then picked up Miaoya and followed. He didn't know what Qin Yu was doing. However, the other party had saved his life and even helped him take revenge. Naturally, he couldn't just leave like that. Niu Daoda whispered, "Zhou Huan, the old ancestor, told me that the clan is a bunch of mad dogs. The consequences of provoking them are severe. So no matter what you want to do, you must think carefully." Qin Yu glanced at her. "Thank you for the reminder, Miss Niu. Between him and that clan, it was either you die or I live. There was no need to consider it at all." Seeing his firm attitude, Niu Daoda didn't say anything else. She only thought that if Qin Yu obtained the great Tao, he would also become a true sovereign in the future. Including the old ancestor, there would be 2 true emperors. If she cultivated diligently, it wouldn't be too difficult for her to become a true emperor on her own. With 3 true sovereigns working together, even if they offended that race, there was no need to fear them. Thinking of this, Niu Daoda's heart immediately calmed down. However, not long after she calmed down. Her face suddenly turned slightly red. She peeked at Qinyu. Luckily, he hadn't noticed. Otherwise, he would have died of embarrassment. On the other side, Qinyu was expressionless. A bead of cold sweat dripped down his temples. No, he had to end this Skyfall Mountain incident as soon as possible, and then run as far away as he could. It would be best if the identity of Zhou Huan vanished into thin air. Niu Daodu was far too naive. She simply couldn't understand the concept of Skyfall Mountain, and the majority of the Great Tao was already in Qinyu's hands. Even without looking back, he could clearly sense what was happening around him. Moreover, she had even peeked at him with a guilty conscience. Qin, you didn't need to ask to know what Niu Daodu was thinking. This was far too dangerous. She was the beloved daughter of the old cow family. He really didn't dare to provoke her. Otherwise, if he wasn't careful, he might really die. As his thoughts raced, Qin Yu subconsciously sped up a bit, and as time passed, the group behind him grew larger and larger. He didn't dare to say that all the cultivators of Skyfall Mountain had gathered here, but there was at least a fifth of them, perhaps even more. This was already enough. After all, Skyfall Mountain was a world of its own, and its scope was massive. The cultivators that entered were scattered all over. For so many people to gather here in such a short period of time, the results were even better than expected. Of course, in the end, this was all because of everyone's selfishness. Qin Yu had used seizing the Great Tao as bait, so who could resist taking the bait? Shua, Qin Yu stopped. He looked back at the crowd and lifted a hand. Everyone, we've arrived. In front of them was a barren canyon. The ground was dark red and there was no vegetation at all. As the wind blew past, a layer of dirt was lifted up. Everyone looked up and gloomy expressions appeared on their faces. There was nothing at all. This fellow, was he playing with them? He was courting death. Zhou Huan, where are the cultivators of that clan you spoke of? If we can't find them, you will be the first to suffer. You wasted our precious time. You deserve to die. Everyone was riled up and gnashed their teeth. Qin Yu had a calm expression. He lightly said, "Everyone, please calm down. Take a look." With a thought, the power of the Great Tao arrived. Kacha! With a cracking sound, space twisted and the canyon in front of them suddenly changed. An altar built from red boulders appeared in front of everyone. From all directions, countless Tao accumulations crazily gathered towards it. 24 cultivators of that clan were sitting cross-legged. Above each of their heads was a blood-red stone phantom. These phantom roared towards the heavens as they swallowed up the Tao accumulations. Chapter 1747. Needless to say, the truth was right before their eyes. Outside the canyon, the cultivators gathered here had ashen faces, and their eyes were filled with hatred. That damned clan! Zhou Huan's accusation was confirmed. They fought to the death for the Tao, but the 24 people of that clan hid here peacefully to obtain the Tao. If they hadn't been discovered, perhaps in the end, they would have fought with their lives on the line, only to discover that their efforts were meaningless. Kill them. Seize the Tao. Damned bastards. That clan should be destroyed. The cultivators were enraged, and they roared as they charged into the canyon. His anger towards that clan was naturally the key reason, but there were also other things mixed within. For example, since that clan hid here secretly, they must have gained something. And now, these Taoist accumulations that were continuously gathering here were the best evidence. In other words, the ownership of the Tao was very likely here. Let's see who will be able to snatch it into his hands today. At a time like this, who was willing to fall behind? It was not an exaggeration to say that they were fighting to be the first. On the blood-colored altar, the cultivators of that clan opened their eyes, and their faces were filled with shock and anger. They did not receive the warning from the clan leader, but now there was no time to find the reason. The many cultivators who were charging over with killing intent were already right in front of them. Protect 327. With a loud shout, 418 stood up and cut off his connection to the Tao. Around him, the other cultivators of that clan showed signs of struggle. But soon they gritted their teeth and followed behind 418, cutting off their own chances of obtaining the Tao. 327 was indeed the most outstanding person among them. His perception and unsealing of the Tao was also the fastest among them. Now he had already grasped almost half of the Tao, and as long as he surpassed half, he could be sure that this Tao would truly belong to him, and no one would be able to compete with him. And apart from 327, for 18 who had the fastest progress had only unsealed a little more than a third of the Tao. If he had given up, there was no need for them to persist. But to say that they were not the least bit moved, resentful, or annoyed would be a lie. The Tao was before them. Furthermore, all of them had already come into contact with the existence of the great Tao. There was a certain chance that they would be able to obtain it for themselves. At the very least, he would be able to sense a bit more, and it would be greatly beneficial to his future cultivation. But now everything was for naught. The numerous cultivators that were charging over naturally wished for nothing more than to tear his corpse into 10,000 pieces. 418 turned his head and looked at 327. Continue unsealing the great Tao. Leave these people outside to us. Remember, you are our last hope and the future of our race. Success or failure depends entirely on you. Don't let our sacrifices go to waste, and don't disappoint the patriarch. With that, he stomped his foot heavily. Come in. The crimson statue above Zhangxian's head was pulled into his body. Pitter-patter. Amidst the crackling sounds of bones and flesh, the 418's body directly increased in size, and its eyes turned blood-red. A powerful, ruthless, and terrifying aura was released from his body. Kill! With a roar, 418 brazenly attacked, punching out and sending the cultivator at the very front flying. At this point, there was no point in explaining, and the cultivators outside would not give them a chance to stall for time. There was only slaughter. Either they could last until 327 finished unsealing the great Tao and controlled more than half of it, and then the outcome would be decided, or everyone would die here. To the cultivators of that race, death was not something that was too frightening. Everyone knew that regardless of whether they were blessed or cursed, they were now nearly undying existences. Kill them all. We must buy time for 327. This is the hope of my race. It cannot be destroyed. With loud roars, the cultivators of that race did the same thing as 418. They pulled the stone statue above their heads into their bodies. And doing this was a checkmate. They would all die in the end. But this could be exchanged for a period of formidable combat strength. This in itself was one of the preparations that race had made ahead of time. It was all for the sake of dealing with a situation like the one before them. Bang, bang, bang. From the very start, the slaughter between the 23 people of that race and the numerous cultivators entered a white-hot state, intense to the extreme. No one was a fool. They could see that this race was desperately trying to protect their last person. 327. Right now, he was still unsealing the great Tao. The stone statue above his head was desperately swallowing up the surging Tao accumulations. Before, 24 people had swallowed them up, but now he was the only one left. The massive amount of Tao accumulations instantly submerged his figure. It was clear that 327 was the one who seized the great Tao from that race. And now he had arrived at a critical moment. He could succeed at any moment. Once he couldn't stop it. Once the great Tao of Mount Tianluo was confirmed, everything they did would become a joke. Everything they did before would become a joke. And there was even a chance that they wouldn't be able to leave here alive. That race that had two true sovereigns had enough courage to face the accusations of all sides. In a situation where they took the initiative to attack, it wasn't impossible for them to kill off all the invading cultivators. No one had a path of retreat. Kill. Stop that race from obtaining the great Tao. Everyone, Today, our lives and deaths are in our hands. The great Tao is before us. Let's go all out. In this life, you and I will never be as close to the true sovereign great Tao as we are today. The cultivators that rushed into the canyon went completely mad. No one thought of retreating because, as they said before, the great Tao was right in front of them. Anyone that retreated might lose the chance to seize the great Tao. There is no need to say anything like the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, because there were too many people. Anyone that hid in the back would be giving up their chance. Moreover, in the current situation, there was no time left for them. If they couldn't stop that race, it would be difficult for them to leave Skyfall Mountain alive. At this time, no one noticed that Qin Yu and his group had already left the battlefield. Beneath the descent of the great Tao, wanting to quietly and inconspicuously escape wasn't difficult at all. Qin Yu stood at the edge of the canyon. He looked at the battlefield from afar, his expression calm. Whether it was that race's cultivators desperately resisting to buy time for 327, or whether it was the all-out attacks of everyone that erupted with a formidable strength, none of this could be triggered. Qin Yu's heart didn't waver at all. This was because he was well aware that no matter how hard the two sides fought in the canyon, everything they did was useless. The ownership of the great Tao had already been determined. They were nothing more than cannon fodder. Without a doubt, once the events of Skyfall Mountain came to an end and the survivors left, everything that race had done would be made public. At that time, that race would inevitably be questioned by all sides in the central wilderness. Their situation would surely be difficult. This was a situation that Qin Yu was happy to see. Niu Dauda whispered, "Zhou Huan, do you have a grudge with that race?" She was a bit naive, but she wasn't stupid. Qin Yu gave her a thumbs up. He smiled and said, "Miss Niu is so smart." Niu Dauda blushed red, her heart filled with sweetness. She liked Qin Yu's praise, even though she knew it was a bit of flowery words. Baiji humphed. She found Qin Yu's actions increasingly displeasing to the eye. Such a pure little girl had been tricked by him like this. How hateful! However, she thought of the madam. Since all of this was arranged by the madam, Baiji could remain silent about it. It was just that Baiji couldn't figure out what the madam wanted. Did she want to destroy the arrangements of that race and seize the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain? Baiji thought she understood a little. Because that race had ruined the madam's plans, the current scene had occurred. Letting out a deep breath, Baiji sat down cross-legged and continued to unseal the great Tao. If she could obtain the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, the madam would surely look at her in a different light. Qin Yu looked at Baiji and shook his head inwardly. He thought that this little girl didn't know the difference between life and death and still wanted to crazily rush down a road of death. This was truly a matter that left one speechless. But he didn't plan to care. Everyone had their own fate, so let them do as they pleased. He took a deep breath and let it out. Qin Yu turned around. "Miss Li, since you've woken up, there is no need to continue pretending." The cultivators of the 13th floor were indeed extraordinary. Even after suffering such serious injuries, they were still able to wake up so quickly. Li Ruhua opened her eyes. She looked at Qin Yu. "Who are you?" The first question went straight to the heart of the matter. But it was clear that Qin Yu wasn't prepared to give her an answer right now. "I am your savior, so you owe me a great favor." Li Ruhua frowned. She thought for a moment and then slowly nodded. "I want to heal my injuries." Niu Daudu looked at Qin Yu. He waved his hand, indicating that it was fine. Li Ruhua sat down cross-legged and closed her eyes. She restrained her aura as much as possible and began to unravel the Tao once more, because this was her only chance to grasp the initiative once more. To place one's life in the hands of others and allow others to decide if they were good or evil wasn't Li Ruhua's style. The good news was that the people around her didn't seem to discover that she was unraveling the great Tao, so they didn't try to stop her. And the bad news was that This 327 had already walked ahead of her. He was already at the point where he could obtain the great Tao at any moment. Control of half of the great Tao. Shua! Li Ruhua opened her eyes. She looked at Qin Yu. You must do something and stop that clan. Qin Yu had a calm expression. It's fine. Li Ruhua frowned. But in the current situation, her words held no weight at all. She could only close her eyes and focus on unraveling. The result of this was that her complexion became increasingly pale. Wei Han suddenly said, You should listen to her. I can sense the great Tao within Skyfall Mountain. That clan will soon succeed. He respected Qin Yu very much. Qin Yu waved his hand. Wei Han, you must know that even though I said I would help you take revenge, Zheng Chu was killed in the end. There are some things that are already destined before they happen. For instance, the great Tao within Skyfall Mountain. Who could have imagined that before it arrived, it was destined to belong to Qin Yu? Everyone on the mountain, as long as they could see this great Tao, they would only help him obtain it as soon as possible. This was truly a matter that left everyone in despair, except for Qin Yu. For some unknown reason, as Wei Han heard Qin Yu say this, he suddenly felt that it was impossible for that clan to succeed. He didn't know the reason, but he was willing to believe it. He nodded and hugged Miaoye even tighter. He no longer thought about the great Tao within Skyfall Mountain. Whoever wanted to fight for it could do so. Wei Han only hoped that he would be able to hold onto Miaoye in his arms and never let go. Niu Dauda blushed a little. She couldn't help but glance at Qin Yu. She discovered that he was looking at the battlefield with a straight face. She couldn't help but curl her lips. Now it seemed that this person was a bit boring. The slaughter continued. It was normal for people to die. Most of them were cultivators that surrounded and attacked. This was because the clan that pulled the stone phantom into their bodies erupted with a formidable strength. But this didn't mean that they wouldn't die. Their absolute advantage in numbers was more than enough to make up for the disparity in strength. With a punch of 418 fists, a cultivator's head was smashed to smithereens. But he was also struck by his opponent's sword and his abdomen was pierced through. He turned his head and looked in the direction of 327. He clenched his teeth and roared, rushing towards another cultivator. Everyone, I will be leaving first. I hope that we will meet again in the future. With a loud laugh, a cultivator from that clan blew himself up. Bang! Terrifying fluctuations of strength instantly reaped the lives of over a dozen people around him. But this only scared everyone back for a breath of time before they rushed forwards once more. They can't hold on any longer. Kill them! With loud roars, everyone couldn't help but look at 327, their eyes blazing with heat. Great Tao! Great Tao! Beneath the Domain Master Mansion, in a large space, more than half of the 24 stone statues had been shattered. The blood-red eggshell that was still intact was covered in cracks, as if it could shatter at any moment. The elder was alarmed and angry. He didn't know what had happened, but something unexpected had happened. In a short period of time, more than half of the stone statues had been destroyed. Patriarch! Patriarch! He didn't dare to wait any longer, even if he knew that the Patriarch was currently dealing with the true sovereign of the 13th Tower. Several breaths of time later, space shook. The Patriarch arrived and immediately discovered that the stone statues had been destroyed. Shua! He appeared, his face shaking. Impossible! Before this, he had already lost his sense of Skyfall Mountain. This meant that the great Tao had chosen its master. After this, the Patriarch confirmed that the great Tao did indeed belong to them. But now, within Skyfall Mountain, the cultivators of that clan were constantly dying. It was clear that there had been a deviation from their judgment. The reason was simple. If the great Tao had truly fallen into the hands of that clan, then Skyfall Mountain would have become their home field. It didn't make sense that their clansmen would be killed. The elder was panic-stricken. Patriarch, what do we do? The Patriarch took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart. He slowly said, Wait, Besides this, there was no other way, unless he disregarded the consequences and forcefully broke into Skyfall Mountain. Not to mention that beast Cheongji, who was watching from the side like a tiger watching its prey. Niu Dingtian wouldn't allow him to brazenly attack now. So, besides waiting, there was nothing else he could do. Damn it, just what had happened within Skyfall Mountain. 3:27. For 118 let out a roar. He widened his eyes and looked at her again. That's right, he was her. This was a secret that not many people in the clan knew of. Goodbye. For 18 whispered, a faint smile on his face. Bang! A heaven-shaking explosion. Nearly 100 people were sucked in. Those closest to him died on the spot. As for the others, they were also affected, their injuries varying in severity. However, he had already fought to this point. He was the last person remaining from that clan. There were no more obstacles in front of him. The surviving cultivators didn't even have time to feel the joy of surviving a bloody battle. They looked at 327, their eyes blazing hot, as if they wanted to burn her to ashes. Outside the canyon, Qin Yu suddenly said she succeeded. Li Ruhua opened her eyes, a pained expression on her face. Just a little bit more, and she would have been able to seize back the great Tao. But just this little bit had been missed by a hair's breadth. She looked at Qin Yu. She didn't understand why this person didn't stop her if he knew everything. But now everything was over. Shua. On the sacrificial altar, the only survivor, 327, suddenly opened its eyes. Who? A gust of wind blew past, unraveling the bun on her head. Her long black hair cascaded down. Her robes fluttered in the wind. Her eyes swept around. Her face was pale, giving off a startling sense of beauty. The cultivators from all over that were desperately rushing over all subconsciously held their breaths. 327 looked up. Her voice was ice cold. You all deserve to die. Bang! The power of the great Tao arrived. Chapter 1748. Outside the canyon. Qin Yu suddenly took a step forward. He glared at 327, his heart filled with raging waves. Impossible! He cried out involuntarily. It wasn't because there was an accident with the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. Rather, when 327 helped him obtain the great Tao, he suddenly felt an extremely intimate connection between them. His bloodline was boiling. This was a reaction that would only occur when one met someone of the same bloodline. Within Skyfall Mountain, Qin Yu was the true heavens of this world. Everything was within his perception. He looked at 327, her eyebrows, the corners of her mouth, the ends of her hair, her aura, everything was clearly telling him. This woman was related to him by blood. As for his relationship with that clan, Qin Yu had once made a judgment. He shared the same bloodline with them. But now, Qin Yu discovered that the truth was far more complicated than he had imagined. 327, just who was she? This was the first time Niu Daodu had seen Qin Yu reveal such emotions. She hurriedly asked, Zhou Huan, what happened? Was the great Tao really stolen by this woman? Seeing Qin Yu remain silent, she took a deep breath. Don't be afraid. I have the old ancestors' golden armor of the great Tao. Even if she obtains the great Tao, she cannot harm you. Li Ruhua frowned, her eyes icy cold. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have acted in the first place. To put it crudely, she had to put on an act when it was time to act. Now that she had become an idiot, what was the use of being incompetent and angry? Baiji frowned. She didn't speak. She stood up and tensed her body, prepared to fight with her life on the line. She glared daggers at 327. The great Tao was the madam's goal, so no one could take it away. So what if she obtained the great Tao? The current 327 wasn't a true sovereign yet, so there was still a chance. Kill her and take back the great Tao. Qin Yu's mind was in a mess. It took him a long time to regain his composure. He glanced at Niu Daodu and slowly said, I'm fine. But these words weren't convincing at all. He couldn't conceal his absent-minded expression. At this time, the cultivators in the canyon had already met with great misfortune. After the enraged 327 grasped the great Tao, it unhesitatingly released its ultimate move. The might of the true Emperor Great Tao was enough to unleash a power that no one below the Emperor realm would be able to withstand, even if it hadn't been fully refined yet. Screams rang out incessantly as the cultivators were killed on the spot. "Don't kill me. 327. I am a disciple of the sky-reaching sect. If you kill me, the old ancestor will not forgive you. I am a direct descendant of the Sioux family, one of the 4 families. As long as you spare my life, I will definitely repay you generously in the future." Unfortunately, these words were useless. 327 showed no mercy, killing people like slaughtering chickens and ducks. Everyone was in despair. They could feel the determination and cold, killing intent of the 327. She really wanted to kill everyone here. "You guys stay here." Qin Yu took a deep breath. He stepped forwards and instantly appeared in the canyon, directly facing the 327. She frowned and looked at Qin Yu, a look of surprise in her eyes. After a slight hesitation, 327 did not make a move. Instead, he ordered coldly, "Back down!" Qin Yu was sure that 327 also had the same feeling as him. It was just that it wasn't as clear as his. Although he didn't know who she was, in this vast and lonely world, the feeling of suddenly meeting a blood relative caused Qin Yu to instinctively feel a trace of warmth and excitement. He suddenly rejoiced that he hadn't killed 327 during the struggle for the ruler's inheritance in the past. Otherwise, it would have been a lifetime of pain and regret. He really didn't know what attitude he should have or what status he should have when facing this 327. So, Qin Yu could only maintain his calm as much as possible. "You are very tired. Take a rest." 327 frowned. But at this time her complexion changed. In the next moment, exhaustion flooded her like a tide, drowning her mind. She tottered on the verge of collapse. She could only desperately keep her eyes open to prevent herself from falling asleep. Just who are you?" Qin Yu said. "I don't know either, but perhaps I can find some answers from you. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Take a rest." Those who had been killed and cried out for their mothers and fathers, those who had fallen into despair, discovered 327's condition. Their eyes brightened. They had been rescued from the brink of death. "There's a problem with this little girl. She can't grasp the great Tao. Attack! Kill her and take revenge for our fallen comrades. Now is the time." No matter what time it was, this was a necessary slogan. But this time, those who had been filled with wild joy and felt as if the great Tao was within reach had misjudged something. They hadn't been able to clearly hear the conversation between Qin Yu and 327. Otherwise, he would have to reconsider whether or not he should charge forward so quickly. Bang! There was a loud explosion. It was like an invisible mountain had fallen down from the highest heavens, crashing down. Those who had rushed forwards the fastest and shouted the loudest, wanting to kill 327 to take revenge for their comrades, were instantly turned into meat paste. They couldn't be any more dead than they were. The canyon fell into a deathly stillness. There was only a terrifying strength that poured into the earth. The ground caved in, forming a bottomless abyss. Cold sweat instantly covered their foreheads. None of them dared to move. Qin Yu calmly said, "Everyone, preserving your lives is already a great fortune. Don't ask for anything more. What do you think?" No one knew what had happened just now. Without any warning, the mountain had suddenly collapsed. Hearing these words, everyone's hearts shook and their faces paled. "Go. Let's leave this place first. We can't stay here for long." Whoosh! Whoosh! Many people turned and fled, but there were still some who didn't give up. They stayed where they were, their faces cloudy and uncertain. Jin Hua was one of them. This time, he had luckily been forgiven by the old ancestor. It was only then that he had the chance to enter Skyfall Mountain and obtain a limitless future. Now the great Tao was within reach. There was clearly a problem with 327, so he wasn't willing to leave like this. His eyes swept over the people who stayed behind. Jin Hua gripped his sword. Qin Yu waited for a moment. Those who needed to leave had already left, and the majority remained. Now, there were less than 100 cultivators left in the canyon. This was seeking riches and honor in danger. They were prepared to take a gamble. Everyone had their own ambitions, and they all had the right to choose. Since they weren't willing to leave, then they would stay behind. Qin Yu reached out a hand and caught hold of 327 who finally couldn't hold on any longer. He lifted his other hand and clenched his fist. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Within the canyon, space instantly collapsed, wildly twisting and blocking out everyone's line of sight. Outside the canyon, everyone's complexions changed. In the next moment, Qin Yu held on to 327 and appeared beside them. Let's go. Within the shaking, broken, and twisted canyon, space had yet to restore itself. But the fate of those cultivators who stayed behind was already unknown. Since he had already acted in front of everyone, Qin Yu didn't plan on hiding anything. After all, everyone present could be considered his own people. With a flick of his sleeves, he led everyone away, vanishing from sight. Domain Master Mansion, a massive underground space. 23 stone statues had shattered. Now only one remained. It was 327. He was also the one who had the highest chance of obtaining the great Tao legacy, the descendant of the patriarch. The patriarch and elder had dignified expressions. The air nearly froze over. Whether she succeeded or failed depended on her. If 327 was also killed, then the great Tao would be thoroughly lost. Suddenly, the patriarch's complexion changed. Without any time to speak, his figure flickered and he vanished from sight. In the next moment, the patriarch appeared outside Skyfall Mountain. His eyes widened. This was because, at this time, Skyfall Mountain was falling apart. Piece by piece, with loud rumbling sounds, they hurled towards the earth. Because they were too fast, the friction with the air caused blazing heavenly fire to burn, dragging out long tails. On this day, the heavens collapsed and the mountains collapsed. Fragments fell into the world, creating a meteor shower. Within a radius of 100,000 miles, everything was affected. Countless people died or were injured. But now, the patriarch could no longer care about these things. There was only one thought in his mind. Whose hands had the great Tao fallen into? 327? Now, the patriarch was no longer so optimistic. Because just a moment ago, when they left the underground of the Domain Master Mansion, he hadn't been able to sense the aura of the great Tao from 327. This might not be the best ending. But since things had come this far, he could only accept it. The patriarch took a deep breath, suppressing the disappointment and helplessness in his heart. He prepared to welcome the appearance of the new master of the great Tao. This person had just obtained the great Tao and hadn't been able to completely refine it. If his aura was exposed, there was no way he could hide it from him. A 300-year, exalted at the Emperor realm, was also acceptable. At the very least, it would give that clan another 300 years of breathing space. Shwa, shwa, shwa. Space twisted continuously, and phantoms of shadows descended from the sky. The true sovereigns were all silent. The patriarch took a deep breath and said coldly before entering Skyfall Mountain, "Everyone signed a contract with my clan. There is no way to change it. I hope that none of you will interfere. As for the matter of my clan's consecrators, I will not let it go." True Sovereign Cheongji suddenly chuckled and said indifferently, "My 13th tower still lacks a protector." Swoosh the patriarch suddenly turned around and glared at him. "Cheongji, Are you sure you want to force me to attack you? True sovereign Cheongji, who was dressed in a black Taoist robe and holding a white jade horsetail whisk, instantly had an icy expression. His eyes surged with ferocity, but in the end he snorted coldly and didn't fight back. Although that clan had no roots and was destined to be destroyed, it was also because of this that they were a bunch of complete lunatics. With the 13th tower strength, they naturally didn't fear that clan, but it would still be very troublesome. In particular, Cheongji had heard the Tower Master mention that clan seemed to have a trace of connection with the untouchable white jade capital above the 9 heavens. This was also the reason why he chose to retreat. The white jade capital, even with true sovereign Cheongji's cultivation, he felt respect from the bottom of his heart. Cheongji retreated. The people who were secretly anticipating were instantly disappointed. They suddenly felt a bit more wary of that clan. Even this lunatic Cheongji didn't dare to act out on the spot. It seemed that the rumors were true. That clan still had a trump card that they hadn't shown yet. In that case, they would have to think more about it today. The patriarch swept his gaze across the crowd and turned to look at Skyfall Mountain. Someone had come out. He frowned slightly. The person who had come out wasn't the person who had obtained the Great Tao. This was a bit strange. After obtaining the Great Tao, one would be the master of Skyfall Mountain. They could leave with a single thought and wouldn't fall behind. Could it be that the person who obtained the Great Tao was uneasy and didn't want to appear too early? As the patriarch was thinking, the expression of the cultivator who had left Skyfall Mountain changed. He turned around and fled without hesitation. Chapter 1749. Bastard, where are you going? Hurry up and come over here. A true emperor phantom scolded with a gloomy face, feeling embarrassed. His disciples and grand-disciples were just too timid. Ah, it's the patriarch. The fleeing cultivator immediately revealed a look of wild joy. He directly rushed over and knelt down with a plop. Disciple Wang Shan greets patriarch. Tears rolled down his face as he spoke. The patriarch of the Dao Yuan sect was so angry that he almost fainted. He kicked him to the ground. You're a man. What are you crying for? Speak properly. The disciple, who was familiar with the patriarch's temper and pride, finally regained his composure. He cursed himself for being scared out of his wits. He quickly wiped away his tears, kowtowed, and stood up. Speak. Who has the Grand Tao? The surrounding gazes gathered. The little fellow had never been surrounded by so many true emperors. He was a little confused and tongue-tied. The patriarch of the Dao Yuan sect frowned. He waved his sleeve and took a few deep breaths. He quickly said, Patriarch, it should be the 327 of that clan that obtained the Grand Tao of Mount Tianluo. What? The eyes of the clan leader, who was already disappointed, suddenly brightened. Little friend, please explain. How do you know about this? Wang Shan looked at the patriarch with an uneasy expression. The patriarch of the Dao Yuan sect sneered. If the patriarch asks, just speak the truth. I can protect you. Niu Dingtian suddenly said, That's right. Little fellow, speak boldly. Wang Shan gritted his teeth and bowed. The patriarch already knows about this. Since you want me to speak, I can only tell you the truth. Then he told the patriarch everything that had happened in the canyon and the conspiracy of that clan. Everything I said is true. Many fellow Taoists escaped alive. Seniors, if you don't believe me, you can ask them. The place fell silent again. The patriarch was both angry and happy. He was angry that the bastard of the Dao Yuan sect had revealed their conspiracy to the public, putting him in a very passive position. The eyes of the old geezers in the surroundings had turned sinister and murderous. But the good news was that 327 had lasted until the end. According to Wang Shan, he had indeed grasped the great Tao of Mount Tianluo, which was why he had been able to surround and kill everyone on his own. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to kill everyone in the canyon. Otherwise, she wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Niu Dingtian sneered. Good move, patriarch. The leader of the tribe thought for a bit and said, The Skyfall Mountain belongs to my tribe after all. This is the last time it will be open to search for the master of the Tao, so we have to make an attempt. It's best if you succeed, but there's no regret if you fail. This is human nature. He didn't admit it directly, but the meaning behind his words was clear. The reason for that was because that clan's chief knew very well that it was impossible for him to shirk responsibility now that things had reached this point. The crux of the matter was that it was the 327 that obtained the great Tao of Mount Tianluo. In other words, from now on, there would be 2 true emperors overseeing the clan. With such a lineup, so what if the conspiracy was exposed? They had achieved their goal. Among the people present, who would dare to cause trouble for that clan, this was the power of the 2 true emperors. Niu Dingtian snorted angrily. Although he looked annoyed, he was laughing coldly in his heart. He felt that it was too early for that clan to be happy, because he had already sensed the aura of the great Tao golden armor. It was very far away, so far away that it had already left the Changshan domain. The great Tao golden armor was intact, which meant that Niu Daodu wasn't injured. Only a true emperor could cross such a long distance in such a short time. In other words, Niu Daodu was with the person who had obtained the great Tao of Mount Tianluo. That clan's 327? Humph, it can't be her. Unfortunately, to avoid arousing suspicion, he couldn't leave yet. Otherwise, he would go and see if it was as he had guessed. That person had already made his move. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More and more people escaped from Mount Tianluo. The news brought by Wang Shan was further confirmed. The great Tao had indeed fallen into the hands of the 327 clan. The leader of the tribe tried his best to remain calm, but the joy in his eyes was almost unconcealable. The great Tao of the true emperor had been recovered. The change in the situation of that clan was like heaven and earth. How could he remain calm? The only thing that puzzled the leader was that 327 had yet to appear. Could it be that she was seizing the time to refine the great Tao of Mount Tianluo? Although the leader of the tribe also hoped that another true emperor would be born in the tribe as soon as possible to help him share the burden. But now was not the best time to refine the great Tao. With so many true emperors descending at the same time, no one could guarantee that no accidents would occur. There was a rush. Sun Chongqing followed the crowd and escaped from Mount Tianluo. He didn't approach the true emperors. Instead, he looked into the distance with an unreadable expression. But soon, he gritted his teeth and made a decision. Life and death, riches and honor, all depended on this gamble. He had to be decisive about what he had to give up. Otherwise, he would never be able to step into the true emperor realm again in this lifetime. Sun Chongqing raised his hand and quickly formed a hand seal, then flicked his sleeve. True Emperor Cheongji, who had a gloomy expression and an unfriendly aura, suddenly frowned. The next moment, a bright light suddenly lit up in the depths of his eyes. Since the great Tao has been determined, I'll be leaving first. With that, he turned and left, instantly disappearing. This scene made the other true emperors frown, especially the leader of the tribe. He focused his attention on the surroundings, and his eyes became cold. If Cheongji wanted to secretly make a move against 327 and ruin her great Tao, he absolutely wouldn't hesitate to fight. But Cheongji really left and disappeared outside Mount Tianluo. No one could understand, but that was the truth, so no one paid attention to it. 327 hadn't come out yet. All of the clan chiefs' thoughts were currently focused on that. On a barren mountain in the Long Mountain region, Swoosh True Emperor Cheongji appeared out of nowhere. The person standing opposite him was Sun Chongqing. Greetings, True Emperor Cheongji. He bowed. True Emperor Cheongji's eyes glowed as he said in a deep voice, Qingtian, are you sure that he has the aura of an immortal seed? Sun Chongqing nodded heavily. If I wasn't confident, I wouldn't have dared to tell you. Good. True Emperor Cheongji laughed. ecstasy on his face, his eyes blazing. An immortal seed, even if it was in an imperfect state, it was still a realm that he could only dream of. And it was just right. If it really was an immortal seed in a perfect state, he wouldn't dare to act recklessly even if the other party was standing right in front of him. Qing Tian, I promise you that as long as what I say is true, I will help you become a true emperor. Sun Chongqing hurriedly bowed. Thank you, true Emperor Cheongji. But deep in his heart, there was a trace of regret and helplessness. An immortal seed. It was an existence that truly coexisted with the world, an existence that was eternal and undying. It wasn't like the strange, cursed existence of that tribe, but the most powerful and noble beings in the world. Only a true emperor could take a step further and transform into an immortal seed. His realm wasn't high enough. Moreover, the other party's strength and the existence of an immortal seed surpassed the limits of Sun Chongqing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told this to true Emperor Cheongji in exchange for his promise. True Emperor Cheongji was smug and impatient. Qing Tian, where are they? Sun Chongqing bowed. True Emperor, I have already attached a trace of divine sense to one of them. It is enough to lock onto their position. However, the only problem is that Niu Dingtian's granddaughter, Niu Daodu, is also with this person. If true Emperor and I fight, Niu Dingtian will be alerted, and that won't be good. True Emperor Cheongji frowned. Niu Dingtian, the strength displayed by the strongest rogue cultivator had exceeded everyone's expectations. Although true Emperor Cheongji had always been confident in his killing power, he didn't have the confidence to fight Niu Dingtian head-on. After frowning and thinking for a while, his expression relaxed. It's fine. Before I left the 13th floor, I asked the Tower Master to give me the boundary ring just in case. Once this treasure is used, it can directly lock onto a world and pull it into the void. Even a true emperor can't lock onto it. Sun Chongqing was overjoyed. If that's the case, nothing will go wrong. He stood up. There's no time to lose. I will go there immediately. True Emperor, you can follow my aura and directly descend to where they are. He was worried that true Emperor Cheongji would get rid of him and snatch it himself after learning the location. After all, there was more than one true emperor in the 13th floor. A trace of dissatisfaction flashed in true Emperor Cheongji's eyes, but he still nodded. All right, in reality, he would never tell the 13th floor about this. This was because the Tower Master had been stuck at the Emperor realm for many years and couldn't take the final step to transform into a long-lived species. If the 13th floor knew about this, he would have no chance. Sun Chongqing bowed and closed his eyes in the next moment. When he opened them again, a terrified expression appeared on his face. True Emperor Cheongji, please spare my life. I will never tell anyone about this. True Emperor Cheongji raised his hand and slapped. Puffed! Sun Chongqing turned into a pile of meat paste and his soul dissipated. This involved a long-lived species. There was no room for error in such an important matter. In this world, only the dead could keep secrets. At the peak of Rippling Cloud Peak, swish! Spiritual Master Qing Tian opened his eyes. The ancient pagoda tree behind him cracked, and most of its leaves withered. Sun Chongqing was dead. He knew this would happen, so he wasn't surprised. Furthermore, Spiritual Master Qing Tian was already in no mood to care about Sun Chongqing's life. He was just a disciple. How could he be qualified to compete with his own great Tao? Taking a deep breath, Spiritual Master Qing Tian stomped on the ground and soared into the sky. The cloud-rippling peak beneath his feet emitted a loud, rumbling sound. Then, like an incomparably massive torch, it began to burn. Flames surged into the sky. All living beings on Rippling Cloud Peak were buried in the sea of fire at this moment. None of them survived. This flame was Spiritual Master Qing Tian's strongest and final trump card. He ignited his Tao foundation in exchange for a period of time to fill the gap in his great Tao and possess strength comparable to that of a true emperor. As for those living beings buried in the flames, they were also part of this exchange ceremony. Power, unparalleled power, roared and flowed in his body. Spiritual Master Qing Tian punched out, shattering the sky and charging in. At this moment he was a true emperor. Although the central wasteland divine prefecture was vast, it could descend with a single thought. At this time he had already locked onto the divine sense attached to his body. On the peak of a barren mountain in the Changshan domain, true sovereign Cheongji, who had been silent all this while, suddenly raised his head, his eyes glowing. Spiritual Master Qing Tian made his move. He took a step forward and disappeared into thin air. Within his soul space, on the surface of the purple moon that rose in the east and set in the west, a figure of flesh and blood appeared. Its lips curved up in a cold sneer. The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain had already been seized by Qin Yu. If he could completely refine it, he could indeed become a true sovereign. But in this way his future was limited, and he could no longer break through. It was just like how Wei Han had inherited the sword Tao she had bestowed upon him. She naturally would not allow this to happen. Therefore, there was still a crucial step after seizing the Tianluo Mountain Tao. It was because of this that at Skyfall Mountain, when Qin Yu discovered the connection between him and 327, his mind had been shaken and he had fallen into a trance. This was why she had deliberately revealed a trace of her aura, allowing Sun Chongqing to discover her. At that time, he had been hiding in the dark and had not made a move. Now the plan was complete. Qin Yu, she suddenly called out. In the outside world, Qin Yu's complexion changed. He looked up into the sky. Niu Daodu, help me take care of her. Before I return, she is not allowed to go anywhere. As he spoke, he pushed 327 forward. With a flick of his sleeves, Niu Daodu and the others were sent away. In the next moment, the skies above his head shattered. Spiritual Master Qing Tian was the first to step out. His aura rose up, and the terrifying suppression of a true sovereign swept out in all directions. In an instant, the entire world fell into a state of collapse. Soon after, true sovereign Cheongji arrived. His eyes blazed with greed as he locked onto Qin Yu. Spiritual Master Qing Tian nodded. It's him. True sovereign Cheongji lifted a hand and a golden ring flew out. It instantly grew tens of millions of times larger and surrounded this world. In the next moment, everything in this world came to a complete standstill. The shattered sky and earth maintained the same state as when it shattered. Countless fragments tumbled in the air, giving off an extremely strange feeling. Let's go. You and I will enter the void realm. As he laughed, true sovereign Cheongji took a step forward. He, spiritual Master Qing Tian, and Qin Yu disappeared at the same time. A few breaths after the three of them left, the space shattered again. Niu Dingtian broke through the sky and arrived, followed by several other true sovereigns. Spiritual Master Qing Tian suddenly went crazy and ignited his Tao foundation in exchange for a short period of time to reach the true sovereign realm. Now that true sovereign Cheongji had appeared, there must be some secret behind this. But obviously they were too late. The other party's aura had disappeared and could not be sensed at all. 13th floor, boundary ring. Niu Dingtian's tone was cold. Suddenly, his expression changed into surprise. Swish! His figure disappeared and reappeared in front of Niu Daodu. Seeing Niu Dingtian's sudden appearance, Niu Daodu, who was at a loss and anxious, burst into tears. Patriarch, please save Zhou Huan. Chapter 1750. Boom! The space shattered, and the patriarch stepped out. Sweeping his gaze across the room, his eyes landed on the unconscious 327 that Niu Daodu was carrying. His face instantly darkened. He raised his hand and clenched it. Boom! A violent power enveloped Niu Daodu, trying to snatch 327 away. She hugged it tightly, and a golden armor of the great Tao appeared around her. Before he left, he had personally handed 327 to her and told her not to go anywhere before he returned. Of course, Niu Daodu would not let go. "Old ancestor, save me!" she screamed. Niu Dingtian's face darkened. He punched the patriarch and sent him flying. "Patriarch, what are you doing?" The patriarch's face was even uglier. He said coldly, "I should be the one asking you this. Why is my clan's disciple 327 in your hands?" His eyes were as sharp as a knife, cold. "Or, Niu Dingtian, are you planning to murder my clan's disciple and rob her of the great Tao?" He stepped forward. Boom! The true sovereign's killing intent burst out, and a terrifying aura swept in all directions. Niu Dingtian frowned. He glanced at Niu Daodu, who was holding 327 in her arms. She was indeed a member of that clan. He was in the wrong. He thought for a moment. "Daodu, what's wrong with her?" Niu Daodu could tell what her old ancestor was thinking. She shook her head. "Zhou Huan gave her to me. Before he returns, I will not hand her over to anyone. Even if I die, I will not let go." Niu Dingtian felt a headache. He glanced at Niu Daodu and saw her determined face. He smiled bitterly. "My little old ancestor, calm down. I did not ask you to hand her over." A glint flashed across his eyes. "Also, who is this Zhou Huan that you mentioned? I have never heard you mention him before." Niu Daodu immediately shed tears. "Zhou Huan. Zhou Huan is the person who saved me. When I was in the Tianluo mountain, those bad guys all wanted to kill me. It's all thanks to Zhou Huan that I can live until now. Old ancestor, quickly think of a way to help him. Just now, Zhou Huan was covered by those two with a big ring. I don't know where he is now." As she spoke, more tears flowed down her face. She was really worried. The corner of Niu Dingtian's mouth twitched. He thought to himself, "Why can't you think about the reason you're making up? Do you really think I'm a fool? I've already lent you the great Tao golden armor. Unless they're blind or they're tired of living and want to commit suicide, they won't bother you. Save you? I think you should save him." As expected of an old antique who had lived for who knew how many years and whose hair was hollowed out, he actually guessed correctly. "Zhou Huan." Niu Dingtian repeated the name over and over again, keeping it in mind. The little girl's happiness and anger were revealed on her face. He could clearly see the worry and nervousness in her emotions. Where did this shameless brat come from? To actually steal my little ancestor's heart in such a short amount of time. He narrowed his eyes and looked around. Uncle Niu, who had been hiding nearby, bitterly smiled and rushed over. He bowed and said, "Greetings, old ancestor." Niu Dingtian asked, "Old Niu, what's going on?" Uncle Niu came over and whispered a few words. He knew what the old ancestor wanted to know. "It's like this. Miss has no impression of this person before. I also tried on the ferry, but I didn't find anything. But now it seems that I've been deceived. That brat is hiding very well." Niu Dingtian was expressionless. He was considering whether Zhou Huan had anything to do with that person. The conclusion was that it was very likely. This made him feel very helpless. He raised his hand and rubbed his face. He looked at Niu Daodu and squeezed out a smile. "Little ancestor, don't worry. If you want him to stay, then stay." Before he could finish, he was interrupted by an angry shout. "Niu Dingtian, don't go too far. I'm not interested in the internal affairs of your Niu family. But 327 is a member of my family. Hand him over to me immediately." He had to find out what had happened. Spiritual Master Qingtian had burned his Tao foundation, and true Sovereign Chongji had attacked together. Obviously, they had other plans. But 327 was now unscathed. It showed that the two's target was not him. What were they doing? Did they have nothing better to do? Impossible. Would he be tormented to the point where he would directly burn his Tao foundation and throw away his life? Moreover, the boundary ring of the 13th floor could not be used easily. Every time it was used, it would consume a lot of energy. Something was wrong. There must be something wrong. Niu Dingtian turned around. Patriarch, don't be impatient. 327 is right here. I won't touch her. But the problem now is that she was handed over to us by Zhou Huan. People of the Niu family always keep their words. Since we've made a promise, we will only return the person to Zhou Huan. As for what you want to do in the future, it's up to you. I won't interfere. The patriarch suddenly took a step forward. Niu Dingtian sneered. He raised his hand, and the great path golden armor whizzed back into his body. Old Niu, take care of Miss. His aura rose. He confronted the patriarch with a cold expression. Patriarch, are you sure you want to fight me now? Rumble. The invisible aura of the two true sovereigns collided, causing a deafening roar. The patriarch's face was ashen. He wished he could eat someone alive. But it was obvious that Niu Dingtian had hit his sore spot. 327 was right here. Once a battle broke out between him and Niu Dingtian, someone might take advantage of the situation. He took a deep breath and exhaled. He said, Fine, I will take a step back. I will let you take care of 327 for now. But I will say this first. If anything happens to 327 in your hands, I swear by the great Tao that I will not let it go. The coldness on Niu Dingtian's face disappeared. He smiled and nodded. No problem. I can guarantee you this. His eyes swept around. I believe that no one will sneak attack the person I want to protect. There was silence. Although everyone knew that they were afraid of Niu Dingtian's strength, they couldn't admit it directly. Otherwise, they would lose face. Of course, there was another important reason. What was the cause of today's incident? What were true sovereign Qiongji and spiritual master Qingtian doing? They found 327, but didn't do anything. And that Zhou Huan, where did he come from? They had never heard of him before. Why would spiritual master Qiongji and Qingtian use the delimitation ring to bring him into the void realm? There were too many questions. The true sovereigns were waiting for the matter to come to an end. When the truth came to light, they would make further decisions. Niu Dingtian had grasped the thoughts of the true sovereigns. That was why he had agreed to the patriarch's condition. Otherwise, he would have protected 327 with all his strength. Ancestor. Niu Daodu ran over and shook him. Save him! Save him! Didn't you hear what I said? Niu Dingtian smiled bitterly. Ancestor, the big ring you said is the treasure of the 13th tower, the delimitation ring. Once it is used, it can freeze a world and pull it into the void realm. Now, no one can find the location of the delimitation ring. We can only wait for them to come out. Ah! Niu Daoda screamed, her face full of sorrow. In her view, although Zhou Huan had hidden his strength and obtained the great Tao of Tianluo Mountain, how could he be a match for true sovereign Qiongji and spiritual master Qingtian? How could he come back? Thinking that Zhou Huan was going to die, she felt like her heart was being cut by a knife. Her eyes were blurred by tears. Niu Daoda didn't know why she was so sad. Don't cry, don't cry. Niu Dingtian was flustered, a wry smile on his face as he looked at Niu Daodu, who was still crying her heart out. After a moment's thought, he waved his sleeve, creating a pocket world to cover the two of them. My ancestor, don't cry. I want to ask you something. Tell me the truth. Niu Daoda sobbed. He is dying. Why? Are you still asking? Niu Dingtian patted his forehead. I don't think Zhou Huan will die so easily. But you have to tell me what happened. Did Zhou Huan get the great Tao of Tianluo Mountain? Niu Daoda nodded. Niu Dingtian was relieved. This time, there was basically no way to escape. This kid was most likely sent by that person. Niu Daodu looked at him expectantly. Niu Dingtian raised his hand and rubbed his face. I can't tell you the specific reason, but Zhou Huan won't die. Don't worry. Niu Daodu's eyes lit up. Really? You're not lying to me, are you? Niu Dingtian nodded and sighed in his heart. It was true that a grown girl couldn't be kept at home. I've doted on you for so many years. When have you ever been so worried about me? The air was filled with jealousy. Niu Dauda blushed. Ancestor, what are you talking about? You're so powerful. How could anything happen to you? But she still smiled. Zhou Huan was fine. She still believed in the words of the old ancestor. Ancestor, when will he come out? Niu Dingtian shook his head. I don't know. A light flashed in his eyes. He didn't know what that person wanted to do. Towering heaven after burning the Taoist foundation and Qiongji were two real, true emperors. Could she suppress two true emperors in her current state? As for Zhou Huan, that brat most likely changed his skin. Others might not be able to fool the true sovereign, but that person was more than capable of doing so. Niu Dingtian had already guessed what had happened in Tianluo Mountain, but he didn't think Qin Yu could do it. So what if he had the true emperor, Great Way? Although he could become a true emperor with the Great Way, it would take time to refine, absorb, and break through step by step. It couldn't be done overnight. In short, although Qin Yu had the Great Way, he was still a useless chicken in front of a true emperor. What was that person's purpose? Qin Yu also wanted to know the answer to Niu Dingtian's question, so he asked directly, Little Meat, what do you want to do? Sage Blue Sky's aura couldn't be concealed from Qin Yu at all. He could tell that this was the Sun Chongqing of the past. Although true Emperor Qiongji hadn't met him before, they were on the same side since they had joined hands. It wasn't hard to determine that the problem had appeared. On Taoist Master Qingtian's body, Little Meaty had done it on purpose. With her ability, she wouldn't be tricked by true Emperor Qiongji, and it was impossible for her to warn true Emperor Qiongji before they attacked. In other words, what happened today was Little Meat's plan to attract true Emperor Qiongji and Qiongji. Little Meat's voice sounded in his mind. You're right. I attracted them here on purpose. Although the Great Way in Tianluo Mountain can reach the true Emperor realm, you can't refine it like this. You need some fuel to get rid of the impurities and only absorb the essence. Qin, you almost fainted. Sister, my dear sister, true emperors, these are two genuine true emperors and you call them fuel? Are you trying to burn me to ashes? Chapter 1751. Promising. Little Meaty sneered. Do you think I would harm you? Qin Yu hurriedly said, It's true. If you have any trump cards, take them out now. I can't stop the two of them, let alone a joint attack, even if true Sovereign Qiongji or Grandmaster Violet Sky were to send a single slap. He would only be able to die. This was the power of a true emperor. It was terrifying to the extreme and impossible to contend against. Meaty said, Not yet. Qin Yu's face turned green. He still had to wait. He felt as if he were sitting on the mouth of a volcano, about to be burned to ashes by the eruption of magma at any moment. Sister, it's useless even if you call me mother. Little Meaty angrily rebuked. Qin Yu, where is your courage? I'm here. What are you afraid of? Qin Yu, I also want to not be afraid. But they were true emperors. Too. Tell me, why can't I be afraid? Shut up, don't talk anymore. Later, just take out your sword and chop with all your might. Let me tell you, true emperors are just like that. As long as they aren't a mortal species, they can be casually killed. A soft sigh suddenly resounded in his mind. If you do this, it's very easy for something to happen. This voice was the little blue lamp. Qin Yu was overjoyed. Then he calmed down. Although this fellow could be quite unreliable at times and would disappear from time to time, he was confident in himself. But comparatively speaking, it was definitely more secure than meat. Qin Yu angrily coughed. He felt a chill and quickly restrained his thoughts. Enough nonsense. Since you've descended, that means you've approved of my plan. Prepare to attack. The little blue lamp was silent. It didn't want to, but with things having come this far, did it have any other choice? She couldn't watch helplessly as Qin Yu was dragged into a ditch and drowned. Hum! In the next moment, within Qin Yu's soul space, the blue sun that rose in the east and set in the west began to shine with a brilliant light. The consciousness of the purple moon and blue sun had been sealed the moment the flesh had entered. According to what she said to Qin Yu, if this sun and moon pair wanted to truly grow, it would take a very long time. Now he should just obediently sleep so that he wouldn't drag her down. The sun and moon shone brilliantly. Radiant light shined upon Qin Yu's soul. He could clearly see that this was the 9 heaven-span great Tao that Min Chongjing had personally forged for him. It was a magnificent sight. It was like a wide path that suddenly rose from the ground, appearing and disappearing between the clouds. It reached the heavens and connected to the gate of heaven. After that was the Emperor realm, but now only a portion of the foundation had been lit up, while the rest of the heavenly great path was being lit up rapidly. At the same time, Qin Yu's consciousness rapidly rose with it. This was what it meant to ride the wind and soar into the highest heavens, see the vastness of the world, see the weight of the divine tool. Heaven and earth were all in front of him and under his feet. It could be reached with a single thought and with one step. This was the true Emperor realm. Qin Yu subconsciously held his breath, his face shaken. Meaty said, "Don't just stand there. Attack, chop them to death." Shwa! Qin Yu's consciousness instantly returned. He opened his eyes. Bang! The power that imprisoned him was directly shattered. True Sovereign Cheongji's eyes brightened. As he stared at Qin Yu, his eyes became increasingly hot and greedy. "As I thought, you really do have a longevity seed." In the blink of an eye, the ant-like existence in front of him actually possessed strength comparable to the Emperor realm. Besides the supreme longevity seed that coexisted with the heavens and earth for eternity, no one else possessed this ability to turn the rotten into the miraculous. It was true. Venerable Sky Heist's pupils shrank, revealing a look of dread. At the same time, he rejoiced that he wasn't greedy and didn't try to seize all of this for himself. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. True sovereign attack. Any delay may lead to unexpected changes. True sovereign Cheongji nodded. He lifted his hand and the boundary ring lit up. An invisible suppressive strength descended. And this was another powerful aspect of the treasure of the 13th tower. It sealed and imprisoned this world, directly pulling it into the void realm. It was similar to constructing a small world that could suppress the true sovereign great Tao and weaken the enemy's strength. Facing Qin Yu, who had a longevity seed in his body, true sovereign Cheongji didn't dare to be careless. He attacked with all his strength. Longevity seed. If one dared to be careless against such an existence, that was the same as seeking death. Boom! Qin Yu's shoulders sank. The shattered earth and space around him was instantly crushed to powder. True sovereign Cheongji frowned. Qin Yu was stronger than he had imagined. But now that things had reached this step, and the existence of the longevity seed was confirmed, there was no way he would stop. He absolutely wouldn't. No matter how strong he was, it was still a fake. He had been forcefully raised to this realm. Attack! True sovereign Cheongji roared and stepped forward. He had no intention of using true sovereign Sky High as cannon fodder, killing the longevity seed and seizing its longevity. When he made this decision, he was already prepared to risk his life. Venerable Sky High roared, his eyes blazing. The aura of the sun and moon. It was even stronger than what he had sensed before. It was so strong that his heart was trembling. If he could obtain it, he would be able to fill in the gaps in his great Tao and reach the Emperor realm easily. It was even possible that he could directly push him to the peak of the Emperor realm. That's right. Right now, Venerable Sky High indeed had this inconceivable and yet incomparably strong thought. The peak of the true sovereign realm. If he could achieve this, then it wasn't impossible for him to fight for the longevity seed. If he succeeded, thump, 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 His heart raced and his eyes blazed. True Sovereign Cheongji and Venerable Sky-High's hearts were burning. They wanted to kill Qinyu at all costs. But Qinyu was faster. The moment the boundary ring exerted pressure, he had already raised his hand. The mountain and river sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed out. Boom! The sword cheered. For the first time, it released its full power without holding anything back. The sword slashed out with the momentum to split the world. It was so fast that no one could react. True Sovereign Cheongji and Venerable Sky-High naturally couldn't be killed so easily. True Sovereign Cheongji and Venerable Sky-High, who had just rushed out, retreated at the same time. They were old foxes who had lived for countless years and had rich combat experience. Of course, they knew what it meant to retreat temporarily. They knew how terrifying this sword was, so they obviously didn't want to take it head-on. But even though they were prepared, the two true sovereigns' expressions still changed when they actually blocked the sword. Spiritual Master Qing Tian groaned, and the qi and blood in his chest surged. An abnormal flush appeared on his face. He had been too careless. He had already blocked it. But the power of this sword was stronger than he had imagined. True Sovereign Cheongji's gaze fell on the mountain and river sword, and he smirked. Good sword. It was indeed a good sword. It had the sword in the stone and the East Sea sword as its foundation, fused with the heaven-splitting sword sex indestructible sword spirit, and was personally forged by Midi. This sword could be ranked among the top in the central wilderness. An Emperor Realm cultivator could use it to increase their combat strength, so he naturally coveted it. At this moment, Qin Yu didn't hesitate at all. He stepped forward and slashed out a second time. True Sovereign Cheongji and Venerable Sky-High continued to dodge. Even though Venerable Sky-High had suffered a small loss due to his carelessness, his expression was still gloomy, but his heart was still calm. As mentioned before, the two true sovereigns were old foxes who had been fighting for a long time, so they were able to keep their composure. One thing was that they couldn't maintain their composure for long. They had personally experienced the power of the mountain and river sword, so they naturally knew how terrifying it was. Such an explosion was a great burden, even for a true sovereign realm cultivator, let alone Qinyu, who had temporarily borrowed power. After withstanding the first 3 attacks, when Qinyu's strength was exhausted, it would be time for them to attack. It wasn't that Qinyu was wrong to do so. After all, it was a borrowed power, so there would definitely be a time limit. It was understandable that he wanted to get out of the situation as soon as possible when he was in danger. True Sovereign Cheongji felt that the outcome was set, and his expression became even more calm. The gloominess on Venerable Sky-High's face had also disappeared. However, being chased by the mountain and river sword was really a very uncomfortable thing. Although he had to dodge it, he still had to block it, and it would more or less cause a certain amount of damage to his body. Apart from that, he would also suffer heavy losses. 1 or 2 swords weren't much, but it couldn't stop Qin Yu's speed. True Sovereign Cheongji had a deep foundation, and he had the protection of the treasures of the 13th floor. Coupled with the support of the boundary ring, he was in a good state. However, Venerable Sky-High was lacking something. Although his aura was still stable, his face was slightly pale. Qin Yu was still attacking, one sword after another. It was endless. It was as if one of the 2 sides on the battlefield had attacked, and he was attacking, and he was still attacking, and still attacking. It was simply a one-sided performance, beating the opponent until they couldn't even lift their heads. True Sovereign Cheongji and Venerable Sky-High were the ones being suppressed. The 2 of them were waiting for the moment Qin Yu was exhausted. Then it would be their counterattack. But after waiting and waiting, Qin Yu was still the same Qin Yu. He was still crazily attacking without showing any signs of fatigue. How was this possible? True Sovereign Cheongji frowned, and a dignified look appeared in his eyes. There was even a trace of disbelief. Even a true sovereign couldn't attack for so long without holding back. Didn't he need to take a breather? Furthermore, how could a borrowed true Emperor Realm cultivator possibly have so much energy to squander? The venerable Sky-High's face was now completely pale. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable shock and anger, as well as a trace of uncontrollable fear. True sovereign Cheongji. He had to think of a way to change the current situation. If this continued, he would be hacked to death by Qinyu. This was truly a way to die. It was an extremely sad and despairing way of dying, especially for venerable Sky-High. Burning his Tao foundation in exchange for a short period of time would allow him to reach the true sovereign realm. The first time he fought with someone, he would be hacked to death. In particular, he had taken the initiative to join forces with true sovereign Cheongji to surround and kill Qinyu. Just thinking about it left one in despair. True sovereign Cheongji frowned. But he couldn't watch helplessly as venerable Sky-High was hacked to death by Qinyu. There was something strange about this boy's body. He needed venerable Sky-High to help him share the pressure. The strength of a long-lived species was even more terrifying than the rumors said. It could actually allow a junior to instantly suppress two true sovereigns. No, it wasn't just suppression. If this continued, he would be unable to withstand it sooner or later. Revolving wheel. With a roar, true sovereign Cheongji raised his hand and grasped forward. Rumble, rumble. Within the void realm, the silent and motionless boundary ring began to slowly revolve. And as it revolved, the small world that had fallen into silence came to life with it. The earth cracked and shattered. The skies turned to dust. The strength of chaos, binding and restraining fell onto Qin Yu's body. The strength of the mountain and river sword was immediately weakened. The treasures of the 13th floor displayed their formidable might once more. Qin Yu frowned. He raised his hand and slashed out with his sword again. But compared to before, this sword had a new change. Shua, a great sun appeared above his head, its brilliant light illuminating the world. Another sword strike. Shua, a crescent moon appeared. It fell on another part of his head, pure and clear. The sun and moon gathered together, forming the heavens and earth. Hum! An invisible suppressive strength spread out from the sun and moon, cleanly removing the restraints on his body. True sovereign Cheongji's complexion changed, and at this moment, Qin Yu slashed out with his sword, heading straight for venerable Sky-High. Before this, he had attacked two people with his sword. Now that he focused on one spot, its power naturally increased. Venerable Sky-High needed to block this sword strike himself. True sovereign, help me. Sky-High's complexion paled. He was sent flying backwards and spat out a mouthful of blood. He could clearly feel that the raging flames in the drifting cloud peak were starting to show signs of weakening. In other words, his strength would soon begin to wane. If he couldn't fill in the gap of the great Tao before the flames were extinguished, he would undoubtedly die. Not only was he unable to outlast Qinyu, but he was actually about to be hacked to death by him. Venerable Sky-High was both shocked and angry. Don't worry. True sovereign Cheongji roared out loud. His body suddenly expanded, and he revealed his true form, turning into a great beast. True sovereign Cheongji of the 13th floor was an ancient, vicious beast. He had once subdued an ancient remnant and used it to bring disaster to the world. Afterwards, the ancient remnant was suppressed and expelled, losing its status as the ruler of the world. Cheongji was subdued by the 13th floor and became a true sovereign protector. He was already used to wearing Taoist robes and rarely revealed his true form. But today's situation was far too strange and dangerous. In addition to the temptation of a long-lived seed, it was enough for him to use his full strength. Roar! Cheongji reared his head back and roared. He displayed his supernatural talent. Space violently shook and waves rose up, rumbling towards Qinyu. He had to first destroy the sun and moon above Qinyu's head and borrow the strength of the boundary ring to suppress him. Only then could he proceed to the next step. His imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. As the waves of space approached Qinyu, they were directly suppressed, dispersing and vanishing. Impossible. Qiong-ji spoke in the human language. His eyes widened in shock. Although the sun and moon gathered together to form the world, this was clearly only a phantom of the sun and moon formed from a sword breath. There was no way he would be wrong about this. It had the strength to contend with the boundary ring. After all, the sword Tao was transcendent, and in addition to the might of this immortal sword, it couldn't be underestimated. But now, what the sun and moon suppressed was his supernatural talent. With true, sovereign Qiongji's boundary, this meant that the phantom of the sun and moon in front of him had the effect of a true sun and moon. A long-lived seed. It had to be a long-lived seed. But he would never have imagined that Qin Yu's current trump card was not only a perfect and flawless longevity seed that once coexisted with the heavens and earth, but also the mysterious and unfathomable little blue lamp. Even little Meaty dreaded him. Before this, she was worried that the little blue lamp wouldn't agree with her decision, so she could only act first and report later, forcing it not to descend. This in itself meant that she viewed the little blue lamp as an equal existence to her. Now, the sword breath sun and moon each contained a trace of the little blue lamp and little Meaty's aura, so their might was naturally formidable. Luckily, this occurred in the void realm, and there was the boundary ring blocking it. Otherwise, once it was discovered by others, it would set off massive waves. Let alone the 13th floor, even the white jade capital high above in the highest heavens would be alarmed. Qin Yu, kill Qiongji first. Little Meaty suddenly said. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He turned and raised his sword. Above his head, the sun and moon followed. Bang! The mountain and river sword cut down. Chapter 1752. Qiongji was both shocked and angry. It wasn't just because Qin Yu had attacked him. More importantly, as its innate divine ability was broken, the sun and moon above its head directly suppressed it. It was as if he had fallen into a swamp. This was unimaginable. He had the boundary ring, but not only was he unable to suppress his opponent, he was instead being suppressed. He suddenly felt a little regretful. He had been a little rash in dealing with Zhou Huan. He should have made more preparations. But now, it was useless to think about all this. Boom! Qiongji was forced back. A wound appeared on his giant body, and large amounts of blood gushed out. The torn flesh wriggled as it rapidly regenerated and healed. But in the next moment, it ruptured again. More blood flowed out. His great path golden armor couldn't block the sword. After it was torn apart, there was a continuous stream of damage. This was because this sword contained power beyond the Emperor realm. Long-lived species, eternal realm. Qiong-ji roared in pain. His eyes turned red. Under the stimulation of anger and greed, the ferocity in his heart was completely aroused. He opened his mouth and spat out a lump of flesh. A black Taoist robe appeared out of thin air and sucked him in. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a Taoist with blank eyes. He reached out and grabbed the white jade horsetail whisk. This was the appearance that Qiong-ji appeared in when he transformed into a human. Qiong-ji was an ancient, vicious beast. His body was extremely large, and because of his bloodline, it was difficult for him to cultivate into a human. A long time ago, the human cultivators fought against the ancient survivors. The battle lasted for thousands of years before a victor was decided. It was at that time that Qiong-ji took the opportunity to devour this Taoist. That was how he became what he was today. Very few people in the 13th tower knew about this. It was Qiong-ji's greatest secret. Kill him! Qiong-ji roared fiercely, killing intent boiling in his eyes. This Taoist cultivated a strange cultivation method. Although Qiong-ji had used it to transform into a human, he hadn't been able to truly refine the Taoist. The Taoist looked up. His empty eyes locked onto Qin Yu. He took a step forward and disappeared. In the next moment, Qin Yu frowned and slashed out with a mountain river sword. Boom! there was a heaven-shaking explosion. A blurry shadow appeared in the air and quickly disappeared. Qin Yu retreated again and raised his sword. The shadow was sent flying again. However, there was not the slightest bit of relaxation on his face. Instead, there was a serious expression on his face, because after 2 consecutive strikes, his opponent did not show any signs of injury. With the power of the mountain and river sword, this was very difficult to imagine. It felt like the instant he struck his opponent, all of his strength had been diverted into nothingness, completely useless. Shadow transformation. This was the cultivation direction of the Taoists. It was a cultivation system that had long been extinct in the world. It was different from any cultivation method that existed in the world. After using it, one's body would become illusory, hovering between reality and illusion. However, one could freely switch between the 2 states based on one's will. The illusory form of the Taoist could block out nearly all the energy that worked on him. He was nearly undefeatable. Qiongji perked up. No matter how much power you borrowed, it was useless against the Taoist shadow. If he couldn't unravel this point, then he would fall into a situation where his strength would be nibbled away and his energy depleted. If he dragged, he could also forcefully drag Qin Yu to death. Soul space, Little Meaty frowned and said, "This thing looks very unfamiliar." She glanced at the blue sun from the corner of her eyes. The little blue lamp was silent for a moment. Then it slowly said, "This is indeed not the cultivation system of this world. I was just saying that there were actually things in this world that we didn't recognize." Little Meaty pointed out, "It looks like you're in trouble." The little blue lamp didn't respond. It directly said, "I can deal with it." Qiongji's eyes widened. This was because just now the illusory Taoist had been forced back once more. But this time it was different from before. The Taoist had been severely wounded. His chest and abdomen were nearly cut in half. Although he was currently healing, it was clear that his figure had become even more illusory. This was a sign that he had consumed a great deal of strength. How was this possible? Without giving Qiongji any time to think, the mountain and river sword came slashing down. The illusory Taoist fiercely looked up, his empty eye sockets erupting with radiance. Brilliance! He opened his mouth to speak, his syllables incomparably strange. But in that instant, Qin Yu understood what he meant. "I found you!" Puff! The illusory Taoist was cut in half by the sword. It tumbled about and faded away. "Ah!" Qiongji cried out in pain. A massive wound appeared on the surface of his massive body. All of his organs were exposed and blood gushed out like a fountain. He desperately tried to cover the wound with his claws and squeeze them together in an attempt to help his flesh and blood grow back. But it was useless. This was because the moment the wound appeared, all of the vitality in the nearby flesh and blood was annihilated, leaving behind a grayish-white color. And what terrified Qiongji the most was that this terrifying strength that could annihilate vitality was already spreading outwards. Once it swept through his entire body, one could imagine what the consequences would be. Could this be the strength of the eternal realm? But this was clearly an imperfect long-lived species, so how could it be so strong? Qiongji was both shocked and angry. But soon he discovered that wasting time thinking about these things was the same as committing suicide. He looked up and stared at Qin Yu with his giant eyes. As he looked at the mountain and river sword in his hand, he subconsciously revealed a look of fear. Run! This thought fiercely rushed out from the depths of his heart like an erupting volcano. He was afraid. Leave behind the boundary ring, and I will spare your life. Qin Yu suddenly said. If he had heard this before, Qiongji would have been furious, but now he was actually secretly delighted. Spiritual Master Qing Tian panicked, his face full of shock and anger. True Emperor, don't listen to this person. We can still fight if we join forces. Qiongji looked hesitant. Qin Yu raised his hand before the mountain and river sword fell. Qiongji roared with all his might, I want you to swear on the great Tao that you won't go back on your word." This sword was extremely terrifying. It was so terrifying that he felt like he was really going to die. Qin Yu held the sword without moving, his face expressionless. "I won't kill you because I don't want to have a conflict with White Jade Jing. If you want to live, keep what happened today a secret. Swear on the great Tao. That doesn't exist." His attitude was extremely domineering. True Sovereign Cheongji was both furious and terrified. He really wanted to go all out, but the spreading power of annihilation was about to break through his suppression. If he didn't deal with it quickly, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Fine." Cheongji clenched his teeth, a cruel expression on his face. "If you dare to lie to me, I will explode my great Tao and destroy the boundary ring to banish you to the depths of the void realm. You will fall into the sea of chaos and never return to this world." Qin Yu turned and walked towards spiritual master Qingtian. His attitude was self-evident. "You can leave now." True Emperor Cheongji. Spiritual master Qingtian revealed a look of despair. The boundary ring trembled. A gap appeared in its lock on this place. Shua. True Emperor Cheongji vanished from sight. And the moment his figure vanished, spiritual master Qingtian soared into the skies. But just as he flew out, he was cut down by a sword. "Zhou Huan, I am also a true emperor. If you dare to kill me, I can also explode my great Tao." Qin Yu was expressionless. "Do you think I will give you a chance?" Spiritual master Qingtian froze. "Kacha!" With a light sound, the point between his eyebrows split open. In the next moment, his entire body was split in half. Above Qin Yu's head, the sun and moon instantly revolved, sucking in their light and turning them into a sun and moon vortex. Even though spiritual master Qingtian was cut in half, he still hadn't died. The two halves of his body tried to fuse back together, but before he could succeed, he was forcefully pulled into the sun and moon vortex. His pitiful screams stretched out, but at this moment they came to an abrupt end. With a crackling sound, white smoke rose up from Qin Yu's palm. The mountain and river sword instantly turned red, emitting billowing waves of heat. He subconsciously let go. With a humming sound, the sword submerged into his body. A strong feeling of weakness spread out from his body, and sweat soaked his robes. But right now, Qin Yu didn't have the mind to care about these things. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. Shua! Qin Yu's consciousness entered his soul space. The first words he said were, "Are you sure you want to do this? Won't there be any problems?" He asked the little blue lamp. After a brief silence, the little blue lamp said, "All this time, I have hidden myself deeply. I have done my best not to leak my strength to the outside world. But there are some things that cannot be avoided. What will come will come." Little Meaty nodded. She looked at Qin Yu, her face full of pity. What a pitiful child. This really is one wave after another. The troubles on your body are increasing. Qin Yu's complexion was ugly. He didn't need Little Meaty to say anything to know that something must have happened. This was because the little blue lamp was far too fierce. Just now, his sword strike had nearly cut open true Sovereign Cheongji's stomach, frightening him so much that he threw down the boundary ring and fled. And with another sword strike, he had brutally killed spiritual master Qingtian, who had burnt his Tao foundation and was comparable to a true sovereign. Although these two sword strikes had placed a tremendous burden on the mountain and river sword and had nearly melted it, the might behind them was heaven-shattering. Was this normal? It was clearly abnormal. With such strong methods, there had to be a reason why the little blue lamp had remained hidden all this time. Now that it had made a move, it seemed as if it could easily suppress two true sovereigns. But to Qin Yu, this wasn't necessarily a good thing. He took a deep breath and exhaled. "Speak. What is it? How many storms have I overcome? I can withstand them." Little Meaty gave him a thumbs up. "You are a man." She didn't speak further. She looked at the projection of the little blue lamp. She was already certain of its identity. Could it be because of this that she had such a different attitude towards Chinyu? It didn't seem like it. The little blue lamp said, "I come from another world." He lifted a hand and pointed a finger. "Simply speaking, you can think of me as a part of one of the 9 suns above my head." As he spoke to her, he paused, as if he were considering how to explain things more clearly. The 9 suns are a part of order, or rather, the manifestation of order. But that doesn't mean that there are no mistakes in the rules. In the endless river of time, they need to constantly shatter and reform themselves in order to become more perfect. In normal circumstances, the shattering and reforming of the 9 suns will be completed in an extremely short period of time. Moreover, no one will notice and no accidents will occur. This is because I am only a part of one of the suns above my head. My memories of the past are greatly lacking, so I don't know what exactly happened. I only know that an accident occurred. The fragments of the suns that should have been completely reformed scattered throughout the 9 realms, causing countless lives to struggle for them. To put it simply, the current situation is that the master of the other fragment has found me. There was a deathly silence in the soul space. After a long time, Chinyu licked his lips. "Is it very strong?" The little blue lamp nodded. Perhaps it thought it was too blunt, so it changed to a more tactful way of saying, "It is a little strong." "How much stronger? Bigger than the heavens?" Chinyu's lips curled up. He asked another key question. "When will they come looking for me?" The little blue lamp thought for a moment. "That's hard to say. To cross worlds, I need to cross the void boundary and rush through the sea of chaos. As long as I don't use my strength, they won't be able to lock onto a clear navigation mark. I can only rely on luck. If my luck is good, it won't matter even if it takes 100 years or 1,000 years. If my luck is bad, they might directly arrive in the next moment." These words were no different from not saying anything at all. You couldn't help but rub his temples. "Since you've been discovered, why were you so fierce just now?" Midi coldly sneered. "Stupid. It's because I've been discovered that I need to end things quickly and restrain my strength as soon as possible to avoid being locked down again." The little blue lamp nodded. "I will be silent for a period of time. Unless they are about to arrive, I won't do anything again." He glanced at Midi. "You arrange it." Midi nodded. "Don't worry, I still have time." Because of the little blue lamp's eruption, the amount of strength he used was much less than he had imagined. "I'm leaving." After glancing at Chinyu, the projection of the little blue lamp vanished from sight. "You also leave. Prepare to refine the great Tao." Midi didn't give Chinyu a chance to speak. She flicked her sleeves and drove him out. "Shwa!" Chinyu opened his eyes, a bitter smile on his face. This was his soul space, okay? How come he, the master, was driven out by you instead? Don't waste time. Hurry up. Midi's voice was filled with impatience. Rumble, rumble. From the sun and moon vortexes above his head, rainbow-colored lights began to gush out. The fuel was about to be prepared.